Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work, so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Somebody, anybody, really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.
It's been dubbed the Great American Race. It requires grit, cunning, and of course a lot of speed. It's time to get ready for the Majors Intimidator, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. I am Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Jake Sperry. Behind the scenes is our director Christian Duploy, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Daytona's oval is legendary, but in case you're not familiar, let's head to our track guide to learn more. Welcome to Daytona International Speedway. This track began life after Bill France Sr. realized the Daytona Beach road course had outgrown itself. With ambitious plans and the blessing of the city officials, he built what would become the very first super speedway in NASCAR history. At 2.5 miles and with 31 degrees of banking, stock cars easily reach speeds of around 200 miles per hour. Pretty much every car can take the course flat out. This makes for one of the most unique styles of racing motorsports has ever seen. The slipstream allows drivers to stay with one another so easily that it becomes less about the speeds each driver can reach and more about the strategy of racing in a pack. Bump drafting is a technique in which the car behind actually pushes the car in front so that both are able to reach higher speeds. And side drafting is another in which the drivers use the air off the sides of their cars to slow their opponents down. Staying out of trouble is always a difficult aspect of superspeedway racing, and it's not uncommon to see drivers intentionally move to the back of the pack to avoid the chaos. In fact, the high speeds make large wrecks so hard to avoid that the term "the big one" has become commonplace to refer to the almost inevitable multi-car pileups the circuit is known for. Also, entering pit lane is its own skill, which requires practice in order to slow the car up as quickly and safely as possible. Keeping the car clean and in contention is the main goal for much of the event. Then the final few laps, it's a race to the line with any alliances usually dissolving and the driver's urge to win taking over. With it being home to one of the world's most famous races, the Daytona 500, fans from around the globe flock to this landmark circuit. Just like the cars on it, the Daytona International Speedway shows no signs of slowing down. Well, when we talk about super speedways, Jake, this is almost the place everybody thinks of.
It is, and there's a reason why the Daytona 500 is one of the most marquee events on the oval calendar, and it pretty much kicks off the amazing NASCAR season each and every time we find it. Moving down here into the panhandle of Florida, over at a wonderful 1801 West International Speedway Boulevard Howe circuit. This is a track where you have to be very switched on from the moment go, especially in this style of machinery. Since its inception of a tri-oval in 1959, it's been exactly the same. 31 degrees banking on the turns, 18 degrees of banking through the tri-oval, 3 degrees on the backstretch, and 2.5 miles each and every time you go around of pure racing thrill. Watch out for these drivers and how hard they want to push, because in these 87 spec machineries, they don't have all the gimmicks and gizmos that's going to keep them rooted to the floor. So if you see someone fly, it's because they're pushing the limits a little too much.
It's going to be a lot more to risk here. It's not the pack racing that we're used to in modern NASCAR. But let's take a look at the championship, though, as it is going to look a little unique because the first round was multi-class. So we've got a tie, of course, with our 3 different winners, Vrosky, Batten, and Ericsson up at the front. Everybody else on down, all tied for their positions. This is where it's really going to start to separate. If you're not used to the majors, they have different styles of racing pretty much each and every race. So it really tests everybody to see who is the most versatile with their speed. But of course, that's just the drivers' standings. They also do a teams championship in this one, Jake.
They certainly do, and at the moment it's SimRacing Sweden Esports who find themselves on the top ahead of Fusion Gold Euro. Dog Bear, who have been here for the longest time, find themselves third, and then it's the Fusion Silver Euro who find themselves in 4th position. Following that is Composite Performance and Connection Lost Racing, with Team KXR in 7th and Udox Daisy in 8th position. Fusion Bronze Euro find themselves in 9th, and the team players Hagstrom Racing Team find themselves currently in 10th position overall. So a lot to work with here, but the big teams to keep an eye out on: SimRacing Sweden Esports, Fusion Gold, and Dog Bear. Those 3 were running with maximum drivers last time out, picking up the points as well as they needed to early on.
And since every race is its own unique format, this one, just to get you kind of up to speed, it's pretty simple, honestly. 200 laps in the 87 NASCAR Cup cars, and they do have a lucky dog turned on, and naturally, with us being on an oval, they will have full course yellows. Now, the big thing that you don't see on here that's going to be different from modern NASCAR, there is no green-white checkers. So we could end under caution. That means towards the end of the race, everybody is going to be in a hurry to be at the front as much as possible, because you don't want to risk being caught out and wind up out of the top spot and somebody gets to cruise home in front of you to victory today. Now, before we get to the racing, we do want to mention our sponsor. Make sure to check out the Majors Garage, home of free Baseline Plus setups. Get help from any of the garage coaches 24/7. Sign up now for awesome, affordable monthly subscriptions, telemetry, coaching, and more by simply clicking on our link in the description below. Also, if you use our special discount code MajorsGSRC, you'll get 10% off. We're in the final moments of practice here before we go off to racing, Jake. This should be an interesting one. It's not the first time they've done the Intimidator in the majors with these 87 Cup cars, but it's been a while, so we might have a few that are unfamiliar with how this is going to play out in terms of the dynamics of this car and this track.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one, because I'm keeping an eye out on all of these drivers and how much they're pushing. You can't be too aggressive with your turn-in into the majority of these corners. You can ride the banking down, but the moment that you start putting a little bit too much wheel work into the car, it is going to snap. And they've got a choice of 4 that they can work with. They can work with the Buick Sabre, they've got the Pontiac they can go to, the Ford, and the Chevrolet. So there's certainly options for them, but what they'll be looking at is how are they going to manage tipping the car into the corner, especially with the amount of excess speed they're going to get through the slipstream. I think we're going to see some cars which are very slim, very sleek, and as such, very slippery when they're out there. I've been keeping an eye out on the practice times, and they are 1.5 seconds faster than the official lap record.
Whew. Yeah, it's definitely looking like they have found some speed out there. Now, they've already done qualifying, so they will grid up in a predetermined order. This is all just practice today, so it won't mean as much for the drivers, but still being able to hook it up today, that's going to be oh so important. One minor thing, I'm a little sad because there's none of the Pontiacs. My first car was a Pontiac pretty much from this exact era in the late 80s, and nobody has elected to use that one. So I'm a little sad about that. But we'll still get some good racing as the drivers now switch on over to our gridding for today's 200-lap event. So why don't we take the time to go through our starting order. It's going to be Kyle Hendricks who will start this one on the pole position for today's race. You've got Robert Northway going to be starting to his outside. Ray Partridge will begin in P3 and Eric Smith in the 4th position. Jesper Eriksson starts from the 5th spot with Brian Scrivener to his outside. Garen Batten, who we saw towards the top of the championship points, will start from 7th. Stephen Verveyen will be in the 8th position. After that, row 5 sees Oscar Fredrickson flanked by Troy Anderson to round out your top 10. Then, of course, we've got Tom Guest starting in 11th. Alex Smith will be in P12. From there, David Baker will start in 13th. Sebastian Jackson is in 14th position.
Yeah, checklist. And
sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely fine. So I guess I'm running into a couple of troubles here, but with Pateklis and Hutchinson on row 8, you then got Bogdan Moldovan and Gary Thomas, then Edward Shelley and Treva Varovsky.
Indeed, 21st goes to Daniel Holmer, and then it's Hackenschott in the 22nd position. Scott Kukas will be P23, and Andrew Schism in the 24th position. Jeff Schmeier, P25, Josh Hampton, 26, and Adam Preston, 27th. Then you've got Daniel Thomas in the 28th, followed by our last few. Jay Bonds will be starting 29th, Michael Hogg, 30th, and Jerry Forkolb, and Cameron Brown will round out your 32 drivers racing today. So not quite as big as what you're used to seeing in a NASCAR field, but there is going to be plenty to keep everybody on their toes there, Jake.
Yeah, there is. So while it is only 32, it's still going to be a strong amount of drivers. You're going to be looking around and saying, well, okay, we're running down as if we're basically starting from 0, but we've already had an incident and, we've lost about 7 or 8 cars out there early on. But that doesn't mean that these drivers can't still make moves, can't still make progress. This is going to be a tactical race because you're definitely not going to win this one in the first 100 laps of this race. You're going to be looking around at about lap 150 is the time you've really got to make some moves. If you're at the front, it's a perfect place to be. If you're in the middle, it's the perfect place to try and fuel save and gain track position. So make sure that you can move on up through the order to get into a place where trouble does not find your place.
Exactly. Just surviving to the end to position yourself going to be so important here at the Intimidator. And drivers will know that going in, although we do have a few that don't have as much experience on the oval side. So there's going to be a mix of drivers, like we said. This series does all types of racing, and that means all types of competitors are in. Green flag is out. We go racing at Daytona for the Intimidator for 200 laps, and Kyle Hendricks gets a good start. We'll see if they start to get into a bit of a pack here or if they'll separate, since these cars are not as prone to the pack racing we see in modern times.
Well, I was keeping an eye on Jesper Eriksson. It looked like he had the pit limiter stuck, so he had trouble out there. There's trouble up high, and the first caution comes immediately as they now start wrecking down to the bottom. So not great off the start. Troy Anderson is the driver who is caught out and has gone for a ride in the 22. He was up into the wall. He leant down low and had contact with Garen Batten, the veteran.
Yeah, unfortunate that this just came down to a bit of a miscommunication going into that first corner, So already seen drivers taken out, but they are not necessarily out of the race. There is one spare car waiting for our drivers in the majors. That is something that's been traditional since the very start. They want, with most of these races being so long, for everybody to have a chance to try and get to the finish. So while Troy looks like he had a bit of a rough one to start, he can get back into this race, especially with the lucky dog, Jake. He will have chances to try and get back into it.
He will, and being the only driver a lap down, he'll be the only one to benefit off of that, which happens during a caution period. So he will certainly get the chance to move back up. But it is an incident of his own doing. Garen Batten is a very experienced driver who knows how to hold his line and knows basically the dimensions of any car that he's working with. So to see Anderson try and pinch down and have no movement back, Garen Batten does not move for anyone. It's on his own fault that he finds himself turned around, and it just goes to show you early you've got to settle into a rhythm. Now nerves are going to start coming into play because they've had a false start of about half a lap, and they don't want that to happen again.
Exactly. So there's Troy. Yeah, as soon as the hit happens, there's not much he can do. Does at least one rollover before he gets hit by a couple of cars. Oof, yeah, he certainly goes through a spin cycle, and hence why he couldn't drive it back to pit lane. That was pretty much the car toast as soon as he came to a halt.
And what I will say as well is that it will slightly affect his strategy. I doubt that we're going to see many takers from the front diving into the pits, but we've got a handful who are diving in, and they're led by Gary Thomas, who's leading the group in. So Gary Thomas, Scott Kukas, Jeff Schmeier, Joshua Hampton, Daniel Thomas, Michael Hogg, and Jerry Furkolb are all coming in. So that's 7 drivers into the pits. Now, you might be wondering why you would come into the pits on just lap 3 of this race, end of lap 2. Well, any little helps when it comes to the fuel strategy. That might be 2 laps that they can save a little bit later on in the race. They've got unlimited tyre sets that they can use over the course of this race, so it pays to put fresher sets of tyres on than everyone else. And ultimately, they're not losing that much track position. They are all outside of the top 20, those who came in.
Yeah, and without the limits on the tires, definitely means might as well just slap them on. So for those curious about that, yeah, don't have to worry down in pit lane on trying to get those fresh sets on. Robert Northway here running in second on the restart. I do love the other thing that's fun about the majors is with them mimicking so many real world races, a lot of these drivers will often try and imitate some classic paint schemes, especially in these older cars when they bring out the vintage machinery here. And this is no exception. I've been kind of cruising around looking at some of them, and there's some very appropriate homages that have shown up.
Yeah, and just look at how they are stacking up those cars right now. They're trying to get so much turn in on the left-hand side tyres that the front right on the back stretch was actually up in the air there, Joe, which goes to tell you just how much they are trying to get as much turn in through these corners. They are really going to be looking to try and push and get as much as they can out of these vehicles through each and every corner that they can, knowing that the car, when they go at full speed, is going to have that lean the other way, and they're going to have to be working towards getting that car, getting all of the banking working to it. So that's going to be worth keeping in mind. They are behind the iRacing sedan safety car, and when the lights go off of the iRacing sedan safety car, that will indicate that we are on 1 lap to go, and the fact that they are starting to line up now at 2 wide as they go through indicates the lights have just come off, and we will be going back to green on lap 5 here of 200.
Some bad news for fans of Troy Anderson. He has not returned to the track yet, so I suppose that means he has not used his free repair. So he would have that in his pocket for later if he's able to get back out on the track, but he's going to be many laps down, so it's going to be even more difficult to try and get to the finish in a good position. But as we've seen, attrition could rack a few of them up. And as I say that, I just see Troy leaving pit lane now. So he is going to get back out, but he's going to be, looks like 2 laps down from the lead. So not impossible, but certainly going to be a bit of a boring one here at the start as he waits for everything to kind of go his way. Let's see if we can get more than half a lap in on this one, as Kyle Hendricks will still be our leader on the restart.
Yeah, so not much movement was there. I caught an eye on the start. It was Jesper Eriksson who had a poor getaway. It looked like he kept the pit limiter on or something of that ilk, because he was stuck at 84 miles an hour and then had to remember to disengage and go, and he dropped a lot of speed off of the restart. For someone so high up in the championship, he definitely needs to try and get himself moving forward. He's lucky he only lost the 1 position with that mistake, but I would keep an eye on this restart for how the likes of Ray Partridge responds in the number 8 car down in 3rd position. I think he's going to be the interesting factor, because if Northway in the 46 doesn't get a good start, it's Partridge who's got the first license to attack.
One thing to remember is these cars don't actually have the pit limiter on them, and if they were doing it accurate to the real thing, they didn't have a pit speed limit back then either. That was not implemented until the early 90s in NASCAR, but that's something they can't turn off here in iRacing. So they do have to obey that pit speed limit and could get a penalty from it. Pace car is in, and the green flag is back out here at Daytona. Another good jump for Kyle Hendricks, absolutely leaping away, but he's probably going to get gobbled up by the pack once they start to work together.
Yeah, and this is where you're going to need to start forming those lines. Partridge not in the greatest place, but Northway drops low a little bit there, trying to get the line that's wanted, and they're all trying to find that run and that space out there. Hendricks, of course, being out in front doing the donkey work, that's not going to help. And they're up and down, they're all around. They're going to be 3 wide on the back stretch. Little tag there in the back, certainly not going to help things out either to Jeff Schmeier, who's got to stay out of trouble there. But Hendricks covers off the run, and it's now Northway against Eric Smith. Stuck on the outside, but here comes Ericsson down on the low side. He now moves to 3rd.
You said there were some lines that need to form, but I don't see any semblance of that as somebody got really close to the outside wall out of turn 4. We hop on board with Ray Partridge looking forward at the top 4 as they come down into turn 1. Once again, remember, a little bit more driving required in these cars. So as Northway has to dive up to the high side to get out of the way, he's going to fall back and might actually fall behind Eric Smith as well.
Yeah, it's definitely looking that way and needing that slipstream coming along the back stretch, try and get that run. There's the cutover that works, and they start getting busy. A lot of the fusion cars there, the silvers and golds, all there together. So you've got Brian Scrivener in there up with Stephen Vivian, who's up there. Alex Smith in the mix as well, and dropping all the space is Garen Batten. He goes right to the back of that group, falls way outside the top 10. So we're going to see a lot of jostling and positioning, it looks like here, because these drivers have to be very alert to the temperatures out there. The engine temperature is going to be one of the most important things to keep in mind over the course of this run. You can't go flat out each and every single lap.
Exactly. And even though it's not the sort of tandem pushing that you might see more in modern times, the drivers do still want to be around their teammates and be in a group. So yeah, the amount of fusion cars that we have out here really plays to their advantage.
Certainly does, but at the front, it's neither at the moment. Jesper Eriksson trying to go high side on Kyle Hendricks, gets the run out of 4, and will move to the point going through the tri-oval. But here comes the little look back, and that's where the bottom groove is certainly working out there, because there is help coming from Eric Smith, which works. Sweden SimRace Esports move up high because Oscar Fredriksson is behind now when it comes to Jesper Eriksson, and now the two teammates can start working together in what some may say is a very individualized sport with team racing elements in it. And look at how aggressive Ericsson goes down low. He wants the side draft there to give himself a little bit of a boost as Northway and the likes of Trivarovsky wait on. Vivian now up into 4th position, making moves.
That orange 73 kind of on his lonesome, surrounded by a lot of other cars from various teams, but doing quite well. The Swedish contingent once again showing up this year. Very, very strong. Ericsson and Fredriksson up within the top 10 easily in the early stages. And speaking of up top, both of them seem relatively comfortable with that high side.
Yeah, and some will and some won't, and it goes down to preference. Most drivers who maybe aren't as comfortable with the ovals like sticking down to the low side, the path of least resistance, the place where the least amount of trouble can happen to you as you go on through. The more that you get experience with ovals, the more you like to jump up high. I've never seen people go uberly that high, but he's definitely running down the banking here through the corners is Ericsson. It's a very unique line that's being taken. It's giving him every chance to try and attack off the exit of these corners. And I think that's what he's trying to do to get the launch. He's stuck knowing that he's the only car out there in the train, and suddenly there is a little bit of movement now as Trevor Vavrovsky, who started 20th all the way back on row 10, finds himself inside the top 5, almost looked to hell.
Yeah, track position not as critical at the start of this style of racing. You just need to be able to safely move forward. So we ride on board with Steven, looking like he might move into 3rd here. We're going to get another side-by-side. Ericsson decides he's had enough of that high line and is going to try and duck down low. But Hendricks still fights back using the slingshot off the top side. But it's not as effective as I would have thought. It seems like Jesper's got a little more speed on the bottom.
Yeah, Jesper looking for that run, and his 13 thousandths clear at the line, but he's sitting down in a position where he realizes the best place to be in a race like this for him is at the front, and he almost clips the apron as he goes through, which rides him up half a track up the circuit, and that could have put Carl Hendricks into a spot of bother if he wasn't too careful. Maybe slightly had to open out the steering a bit as he went on through, but this group right now needs to cooperate because it's 6, and they've got a tiny gap to Robert Northway, and that secondary group is going to try and work, and it goes all the way back to Bogdan Moldovan, who is there in 18th place, and then it's pretty much the stragglers after that.
Just watching these cars and having attempted driving them in times past here on iRacing around this track, I can't fathom what the real racers must have felt inside these machines and the bravery required to hop into these cars, because they weren't terribly safe back then. It really impresses me and kind of drives home how scary it must have been.
Well, this is the thing with the classics, and this is a circuit that technically is a lot safer because they didn't have a safer barrier around the outside of this track to work with either. It was pure concrete. You went into it, you basically gambled with your life in your hands. But that's the thing about racing. That was the thrill that they all went out there and knew that, as they go through an attack to the wall by Eric Smith is not going to be helpful. They knew that every time they went in that car, the first thing they needed to do was prioritize getting back home safely first and foremost. Points were the secondary thought.
Indeed. Thankfully, don't have to worry about safety and well-being here on the virtual side. But still, you want those points, and getting there is important. Another brush on the wall as Eric Smith is struggling off the corners. That's the second time in one lap we've seen him graze the outside.
It's so easy to do. You get caught up in tunnel vision. You're always looking down to the bottom left. You're not always looking over to the bottom right, so to speak, and what's coming up on your right-hand side. So you've got to be very switched on as to where your eye line gazes. And as of that, you look at Eric Smith, he's trying to push, and he might actually just be hitting a range where the tyres have just gone a little bit past their prime, and they're starting to look around and say, well, what's next? What are we able to manage in terms of a long run? Looking at the race laps, 42.6s were the quickest. They're already down now into the 44, so they're about a second and a half slower from when they had fresh tyres, and we're going to go 3 wide for the race lead for Vian on the top side. On the low side is Kyle Hendricks. Through the middle is Jesper Eriksson, who had the lead, and he'll see both first and second go zooming on by.
The Canadian has been aggressive here at the start, and I'm kind of surprised how many drivers have been so aggressive. We talked about needing to just get to the finish on this one. I thought that we'd see things kind of settle in here, but that's not really what I've been perceiving.
No, it's very much in the case of Stephen Vervine's perspective. It's like watching him out there, and everyone he's up against is the US hockey team at the moment. It's very much that sort of battle that he finds himself in play with. So he's looking at trying to give himself some room. Started in 8th position, looking to go to the front. Gets a lot of help out there on the right-hand side, on the top side of the circuit. So it's definitely going to be looking to try and get that launch through 3, which will give him the race lead, and does so. And this is what you're looking at. He tries to go down, contact. He'll go around. Caution flag comes out.
He'll get spun up to the high side as everybody managed to avoid him. It looks like maybe he should be clean. Everybody's scattering. So essentially a 2-car incident, and only one of them really comes off the worst of it. But, well, if I said that Stephen Vervian was aggressive, sometimes taking that approach does come with a risk, and I think he found that out.
Yeah, he just came down too quickly. He needed to leave that room. Hendricks was always going to be aggressive through the mid part of the corner to attack back off for the exit. He hasn't wanted to relinquish that race lead, and that is where a little bit of inexperience comes through. Just because the spotter says you're clear doesn't mean you're clear to come back down. You can see Hendricks is getting the momentum, and effectively Hendricks drives through him through this section. So there's the contact. He's got to try and get well out of it here, because that is savable from Vervine's perspective. That secondary hit breaks the plane of 90 degrees, which brings the caution out, and the third bit of contact sends him up into the barriers and around, and that will be the fast repair used by Vervian, and he'll need to really rush to get himself back into position. But Hendricks there in that situation, he'll say, look, I had more speed on the bottom side of the circuit. I had a really good chance on the low side to go and get that position back, because he was basically offering the door open, and he just shut it slightly too late.
The fascinating twist on all of this, like you said, it was turning the car more than 90 degrees that pulled out the yellow. But you'll notice that Hendricks is still in the lead despite him falling backwards after he tried to get out of the way. And that's because the yellow flew so early on that accident, so it counted him as the leader. That said, he does have a bit of damage on the front. Does he take the free repair?
I'd say no in this situation. I think Carl Hendricks will just take manual repair here at this stop. If he takes the fast repair, he leaves himself very vulnerable. Yes, he's got the front right showing, but if he can put some tape on there or anything like that to go and get himself back into position, quote unquote, get the panel beaters out, I'm sure that he'll be in a good position later on to try and get going. The good news about a yellow flag safety pit stop like we've got here and everybody in is that, yes, he might lose track position, but he'll have time to get some repairs done as he goes through. And on the exit, Sweden SimRace Esports got that perfect. Jesper Eriksson leads out Oscar Fredriksson.
Interesting. So is able to jump him in the pit stop despite Hendricks having that front pit stall to be able to just accelerate straight out onto the track. And Steven Verveyen took his spare car, naturally. We saw him duck into pit lane immediately, but I imagine that would have been pit lane closed at the time. So I think we're going to see him probably get the end of line signal here.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened. Verveyen would have been damaged and wouldn't have wanted to have run around for a whole lap with a car in the state that it was, so probably took the pits early, and so I wouldn't be surprised to see him run on back. What this is good news for, so to speak here, is Troy Anderson, who needed that because he's at the front of this group, and he will get the lucky dog, which will put him back then onto the leading lap of the race. So, one lap down, in this race. So he'll definitely have a good chance. There's Verveyen down on the bottom in the LDL Racing 73, and so he can see moving to the back of the field, as is his instruction to do so, because of the fact of what has gone on with him entering that pit and having to do so a little bit earlier than others.
And with Troy getting that lucky dog, like you mentioned, that's why we're seeing him come into pit lane, because he knows he's going to get waved around regardless. So might as well take the opportunity to stay on everybody else's strategy and take advantage of that wave around here. Let's see, are we already? Already lights off on the pace car. So they're starting to get back into order, but this time with Jesper Eriksson going to be leading them to the green.
Yeah, that's going to be really important. I tell you what is also important is noting who's got a spotter and who hasn't. Everybody out here is driving on their own today, Joe, except for one, and that is the number 10 of Trevor Vavrovsky, who's got Nicholas Davis up in the tower working for him here today from Club Texas, which will be a very important piece of work for him because he knows that you're looking around up, down, left, right, sideways. You might as well get in the Great Glass Elevator and pick a direction sometimes when you're in Daytona racing in mode as he is right now. But the fact that he's moved up 15 spaces and did so without really any help from anybody else just goes to show you he's picking and choosing the moments, and he's given himself the track position he wants.
All right, so restarting on lap 19. We're already 2 cautions in. Not the best of harbingers, but it doesn't mean that we might see things start to clean up as this race goes on, especially now that everybody's gotten a bit of a taste of how this is going to go. Again, like we said, not everyone has tons of experience, not just racing on ovals, but even on specifically these cars in iRacing. You've got to hop into just about everything to try and take the championship here in the majors. But we do have a lot of regulars. You mentioned Vavrovsky. He's been around since just about the beginning of the majors. Eriksson, Fredriksson have lots of experience, so we expect them to really be comfortable. Ray Partridge as well. Wayne Hutchison has been around for a long, long time, so have done plenty of these Intimidator races. All right, safety car, or pace car as we like to call it over here on this side of the pond, is going to be heading in, and Jesper will have control of the field. He goes as quickly as he can pretty much, and he starts to scoot away.
Well, this is what you have when your teammates, you can coordinate the restart, and when you got 1 and 3, Oscar Fredriksson was very alert to Jesper Eriksson. He would have gone 3, 2, 1, go, and launched, and it leaves Carl Hendricks up on the top side, having to really work against the machine. I remember once upon a time it was a 3v1 that was being done here at Daytona when it was the Gen 6s that were going into play. So you always get a sense that the team game certainly gives an opportunity. There was a little look from the likes then of Robert Northway and co, who were trying to find some progress and to move on through, but ultimately decided against it. I think it was Alex Smith who was the one who had to move. But look at this on the top side here from Kyle Hendricks. He got past one, and now he wants the lead back again.
Not willing to give it up quite yet. And like you said, did not take that spare car. So a slight bit of damage on the front. That might make it more difficult for him. These cars need to be absolutely pristine to get the most top end. But he seems to be holding his own here on the high side.
Oh, he's doing an incredible job, and I wonder maybe if he's just getting that extra little bit of rotation through the corner now with the damage to the right, which is giving him what he needs. He's getting help now as Eric Smith jumps through, and then Bogdan Moldovan moving up as well into the third row with the likes of Trevor Vavrovsky. So there is certainly progress and movement going on the top lane at the moment, trying to get that in. And this is a track that will rubber up depending on where drivers go. Sometimes the bottom lane's going to work, but over time, that might migrate up to the top side depending on how much the track has been used. So keep that in mind, that these different lanes, this is a car that can move, and we'll see drivers look to move as this goes on. And Ericsson moves right up door to door.
Nearly making contact with him. Not something you want to do at 200 plus miles an hour. In fact, the end of the straightaway, they're looking at 212 and top out just about there before they have to steer into the corner. Remember, this is before they put restrictor plates. This was the last year before they put the restrictor plates on the car. So this is the fastest that NASCAR ever was.
Race control have just come through, and car 385, which is Kyle Hendricks, is going to be awarded a drive-through penalty for the lap 15 incident, according to race control. So that is going to really dent aspirations and is going to keep everybody on notice when, of course, Kyle Hendricks has to dive into the pits.
Something new introduced last season for the majors is that live race control. So they have taken a look at it, and unfortunately for Kyle, it has not gone his way. This is not a track where you want a drive-through. He could still and likely will stay on the lead lap, but he's going to have nobody to work with.
And as such, will be very reliant on another caution coming out. So penalties now administered. He's got 4 laps to go and serve that, or he gets disqualified. So it will now leave the SimRace Sweden drivers of Ericsson and Fredriksson 1 and 2. But Bogdan Moldovan is trying to use that high line, but he washes out there a little bit through the back half of 1 and into 2. And now we'll drop the line, and through back will go Eric Smith. And everyone's now going to try and find himself some play. Hendricks desperate to get on the radio to say, please give me a lane to go down to the bottom. I've got a penalty to serve, but nobody's going to let him have that room. He's got to make his way himself.
He'll have to find something. He does have 3 or 4 laps to try and get down there and serve this one. Has officially been handed to him now on our time and in scoring. So he'll come across the line this time. That's 1 gone, and there's no space there for him to try and sneak in at this stage. Just behind them, different orange car kind of blocking the way. Bogdan Moldovan that you mentioned a little bit earlier. Now he finally has an open. If he slows a little bit, he could get down there, but he's not choosing to.
He's trying to outpower Jesper Eriksson here, and that's important. So that's the way he's trying to get this one through. He either needs someone to bump him from behind to go and give him that run, or he's got to try and fall through. And Eriksson, again, just leans halfway through the corner and says, well, if you're going to outpower me, you're going to be in trouble. He's got to try and fall into line, and he's desperate on the radio here, is Kyle, saying, please, come on, don't fight me on this. I am not in this race.
Yeah, and those around him, crew chiefs, do need to make everybody aware you don't have to race this guy. Although, I mean, if they really wanted to be a little bit mean in this situation, they could continue to try and box him in and force the situation. I don't know, actually, if the race control would have anything to say about that, because technically you don't really have a prerogative to pull over for him.
No, you don't. And he's now trying to lean in. He'll lose one, he'll lose two. They've got to find a space here, does Kyle, because the penalty came in late. So if he's not going to be able to get down in and serve that penalty, he might be in a world of trouble. And again, he can't find himself the angle. And depending on where that goes, finally, he falls down to the bottom of the line. But has he gone too late on it? It looks like he's okay for the moment, but it'll be having one more lap. He's got to come in this time. Otherwise, they're going to throw the disqualification at him.
Surely. And you know, the thing that we often talk about on this super speedway racing is it's so easy to make friends as well as enemies out there, and it can switch back and forth. I have a feeling Kyle's probably not going to be very helpful to the rest of them the remainder of this race.
No, I definitely think he'll not be happy with the SimRace Sweden drivers, and if there is a situation that comes into play, he is definitely someone who's going to be there. He's on the radio, I'm pitting, moves over left, and look at the hole that is left by his departure of about 5 car lengths to Oscar Fredriksson. Eric Smith and Trevor Vavroski have a lot of work to do to try and pull themselves back. It's single file through the groups back to Adam Preston in the 99 having to battle, and you're looking at everyone right now. They're forming this single file line, and they know now that they've just got to catch up to the car in front to give themselves that opportunity to go and make that move. Low side looking a bit of serpentine going on with Wayne Hutchinson, Ray Partridge and Tom Guest now down on the low side looking for a move.
A little bit more single file than we saw before, though. And actually, before the caution, we did have a bit of a breakaway where it was a front pack and a back pack down there. This one, I don't think they've separated nearly as much, although there's a couple stragglers way at the far end of the field at this stage. Hendricks is back out on the lead lap, but he has nobody around him to help. We'll see whether or not he can manage to hold on to this lead lap until we get our next yellow, because that, like you said, is his only hope of getting back in the hunt. We watched Stephen Vervaien, who was up at the front earlier, but he was involved in that opening incident. Well, he's already climbed to 13th, so the speed is still there.
Well, with the brand new car, effectively, it's like wheeling out a brand new one, but he is on his last life, so to speak, here on lap 28, so he's got to take a little bit of trepidation out there as he looks to try and go through. Robert Northway in communication with him just behind, saying, I don't really want to fight you, but at this moment in time, each and every person that we're going up against, we need to try and find some progress. This for 12th down low. He'll go and take that move and take that position, so Vervaien wanting that track position, jumping up through Ray Partridge next up before a couple of golds that he'll have to get through from Fusion in Pateklis and Edward Shelley are the next two on the list.
Making pretty quick work out there. So keep an eye on that Canadian, Daniel Holmer, another of our Swedish contingent, falling back a little bit, though, in the meantime, down to 18th as he slots in amongst the various Fusion cars. That's the Fusion Silver team, easy to identify, kind of an old homage to the Coors cars from this era.
Yeah, and that's what you got to love here, these liveries. You always have the opportunity to go and give a little bit of a throwback out there, and that throwback is so important in terms of the lifeblood of what's done on. And of course, for example, the iRacing Downshift podcast had Steve Lovender on the other day, who is the generator of Trading Paints, which without Trading Paints, you could say, Joe, that iRacing definitely wouldn't be as big as what it is now, because it's got such character with what everyone can create.
It makes it so easy. Yeah, it was fun to listen into that. I had a chance the other night when it was released to kind of hear it, and also realize I didn't realize that the Trading Paints came about shortly after I'd joined. My goodness, Alex Smith and Moldovan having a real moment there in the background. Thankfully, they'll get away with it. I'm sure Bogdan none too pleased about that block.
Well, Bogdan went high, ducked down low. No, sir, said Alex Smith. Wanted none of that to go. He's in 5th position right now, and you might think that 5th doesn't mean too much at the moment. I say it does, because he's got the ability to latch onto the front four, and in fact, he's going aggressive as Tom Guest there in 9th position puts himself into play. Smith going from defence to attack in half a lap. Vavroski, not much he can do on the top side, but now he's going to come the drive off the exit. He gets a steeper drop along the banking from 31 degrees down to 18 degrees through the tri-oval, and look at Vavroski's run. He leapfrogs past Eric Smith.
Wow, that 10 car is strong coming up along the high side, so watch out for him. Moldovan, though, is also looking good coming into the corner, but then has to really drop back. Seems like he struggled, because I feel like I've seen that 96 car do that multiple times. Once he hits the corner, it seems like he just can't keep control. Somebody back in the back almost lost control. I was trying to see who that was.
Yeah, there was a lot there in trouble, and 3 wide as they push through. That's a line from Wayne Hutchinson and a half, trying to give himself some room. Moldovan, I think, has got a car that's quite tight at the moment. He can definitely tip the car in, but the moment he needs it to turn in the middle of the corner, he's got to roll off the throttle a lot more than others, and that puts him wrong place, wrong time. A little bit of panel bashing between Hutchinson and Patekalis, who finds themselves there. 5 clear at the moment, and now it's a free-for-all behind for those 6th on back. They're trying to find position for Vian, has now moved himself up into 8th because of it.
Starting to see a bit of a breakaway in there, down around 17th. Scott Kukas ahead of Daniel Holmer. Wonder if we'll get another split between the two packs as we ride on board with Vervian. Almost looks like he is hell-bent on trying to get a little bit of revenge there, but we'll see what happens once he reaches the front. Adam Preston with a real moment. One thing you do not want to do in these cars is straddle that apron.
No, you really don't. It's the difference between going on flat ground and bank ground, and it pretty much creates this dichotomy where you get no grip down underneath. You get tyres that want to do one thing on the top side, and on the bottom it just creates this rotation factor as you go through, because all the grip's up on the top and it just wants to pin the car over to the left-hand side. Move for the lead now starting to bring itself into play. Vavroski was leader over the line. Now on the top side they're working Ericsson and Fredriksson with this, I would say, ragtag group of 4 on the bottom. Vavroski, Smith, and Patekalis are there at the moment, and at the moment it's a double-decker Smith sandwich right now with SimRace Sweden Esports filling.
So we're about to the point of the number of laps we ran last time before they had a pit stop. So we're getting into new territory in terms of what we've seen racing. Again, Bogdan getting in the thick of the action there.
It was actually Fredriksson there, Joe, who had a massive slide there as he tiptoed into 1. It meant that Vivian had to get well out of it, and the top line completely capitulated.
Excuse me. Yeah, the other orange car that suddenly got into it. It was Stephen Vian. Thank you. It's Swedish car of Ericsson starting to drop back up high, while Stephen in the 73 managing to size up these two. There you can see him 5th on the track already. Remember, at the end of, it was lap 16 or whatnot. He was all the way at the back of the field. We're on lap 36, and he's managed to pass almost the entirety to get where he is.
It just goes to show you that the hot hand is going to stay hot, and he is going to be a menace all race long, so long as he can stay out of trouble. But position is going to be important. Now trying to work with Alex Smith here down on the bottom, and the cover down low is there by Eric Smith, which then means that Vavroski has to cover down low, and you can see how reactionary things are happening there at the front. If one car starts to make a move, then everyone wants to jump on that same train. It's going to be very difficult. We take a look topside. Look at that, having to get a whole heap of rotation going through. That would have been a very scary moment, because any over rotation, that's a tank slapper, and you straighten the barriers up top.
Yeah, remember, these cars are doing 190 plus on entry, and these aren't like Indy cars. The aero is somewhat minimal on them, so to be able to gather that thing up, that was impressive for sure. It looks like Eric Smith has got a nice little partner. Jesper is going to push him to the front, and they zoom by that number 10 like it was easy.
Well, it was easy there. That was as plain as day as you like. Jesper Eriksson tipping into the corner was up at 215 miles an hour. Trevor Vavroski, by comparison, could only hit 208, so that's 7 miles an hour difference on the straight when you've got a pushing partner. It goes to show you, when they get to the final few laps of this race, it could be anybody's from about 5 to 10 car lengths back, depending on how good the push is.
Did you see Vervian again in the exact same spot as last time? Nearly had contact, although it was the reverse. He was the car behind this time. I think it may have been Alex Smith that kind of cut him off a little bit there. They'll live to fight another day, but he seems like he can't really catch a break once he reaches the front of the field.
No, they're mean at the front, Joe. That's kind of what happens. You get to the front and you want to be where the big boys play, but if you can't hold your own and you can't out-muscle some of the other drivers, then you're just going to try and sit. And in fact, he'll do the same to a car behind him there against Uldis Patekilis. So he'll say, no, I'm going to get my elbow out this time. I'm going to say, I'm not going to get beaten around by pillar to post and bullied around this circuit. I'm going to say, I want the position where I want to be. Patekilis now runs up high, and that's going to put him in trouble because he's got nowhere to go, but he has a lovely little gap to put himself back into because Oscar Fredriksson isn't quite close enough, and the game continues right now as the group now extends all the way back, I would say, to Daniel Thomas in 19th position, and everyone else on back is looking to just try and hope they can stay in some form of range.
There's Eric Smith we saw again going for the block on Stephen Verveijen, just covering him off to make sure he doesn't manage to sneak by. Runs the low side. Eric's in that green and white machine you could see there in the middle of your screen, chasing on Alex Smith. A little bit of a bump draft for Ericsson and Vavrovsky at the front.
Yeah, and that bump's going to be important because each and every time they're going through, they're starting to play this little bit of a game here, Joe, of do I want to be out at the front doing all of the work, burning all the fuel, or do I want to be saving a little bit of fuel if this does go green for a long section of this race? That's what they're going to be eyeing up here is do I want to be at the front or do I want to be saving? And again, up top side is going to be Verveijen, hoping to try and now run against Eric Smith for a place. Has to open out the steering a little bit there for a little bit of unpredictability, and as such it allows Patekilis back into line to try and get this move. But again, this is where you're starting to see where the side draft could become really important. And now all of a sudden, with everyone up at the top for a slight moment, here comes the slingshot from Verveijen, who can get that launch because Patekilis, for just about 400 meters, was without a little bit of turn.
This time he's fully alongside Eric Smith. Can't cover him off there, so he'll sneak ahead, pulls up behind Alex Smith, but then has to get back into line once again. These drivers doing a lot of racing up here at the front, still wanting to stay at the front of the pack instead of ticking off these laps. But at some point, we're going to need to come in for a pit stop. We're now about 24 laps into this stint.
Well, the good news for everyone is that pretty much everybody's on the same strategy at the moment, so it will just go down to who's been the best and the boldest out there with those strategy calls as we go on board with Eric Smith's perspective, watching the battle for third place out there right now with Verveijen then having to muscle his way past Smith, and now it'll be Smith versus Smith out there for the next positions as everybody starts working out where do we need to be, and this is where track position becomes important. You leave yourself stuck like Carl Hendricks was earlier on in the stint, Joe. Good luck trying to get to your fuel number and getting down in for a stop.
Coming up in behind Alex, just trying to keep the speed up here as they weave through the tri-oval once again. I do love these onboards that Dougie has given us, really capturing the spirit of the camera work back in that day where they weren't all that secured on there, so it's a little shaky, and well, they didn't always get the f-stops completely right, so it's a little blown out. But that's what you'd often see in these broadcasts is Eric Smith going to try and pass Alex Smith to the bottom side and not take a no for an answer.
Well, Smith versus Smith, this is all the makings of Will Smith versus Will Smith back in the baseball playoffs once upon a time. It certainly has that sort of vibe to it, but Eric Smith doing exactly what he needed to do there, just leaving a little bit more open space, diving through, having conviction in his skill, and making sure that move was made. So that's going to be important. There's a little look right at the back of this group, trying to move through now. That's Patekilis on Ray Partridge, and look at how it's really opened up at Edward Shelley now. Now we've definitely got two groups here that's starting to form, and this could be cataclysmic if this stays green for a while because Edward Shelley needs to launch it back up to his teammate.
Certainly, we've been talking about that, how important it is to be around friends out here, and if you're kind of all on your own, we've seen what happens, how dicey it can get. They are starting to stretch apart. Patekilis leaving Edward Shelley behind by about half a second. He should still feel some of that slipstream behind him, but he can't lose too much more at this stage, or that top group will start to break away.
7/10 the gap, so this is desperate times, and running a little bit over to the high side, Pateklis is going to drop a bit of speed and effectively become a tow rope out there, which is so important. Fredriksson here in 6th, now looking to move to the top 5 to try and help his teammate Jesper Eriksson out. Alex Smith there on the bottom, drives it hard into the corner, trying to steal as much as he can away, but look at how poised the 12 is just for a moment. He can just keep himself nicely situated, knows that he's got that run if he wants to, trying to use all of the banking, and effectively he's running along those white lines over on the top side, which is marked out as the safe place to go and be his lap traffic. He's running that line up there at the top, and he's doing so quite well.
Finally is able to get down to the bottom behind Smith and ahead of Hutchinson. Oh, but it's an over-under. Look at that slingshot coming down the inside. He's going to snatch that one right back as they come down the super stretch and into turn 3 once again. Getting close to the quarter-way mark of this 200-lap race. So we had a couple cautions at the start, knocking on wood. It seems to have cleaned up slightly.
Yeah, it really has, Joe, and I think it's really important that drivers settle down into a rhythm. They only got half a lap down in their first stint. Big power move down low. Eric Smith having none of Fredriksson, who has to come back up into the path of Alex Smith, who's there in 6th place. A big power move, and we're seeing the egos come out then at the quarter stage of this race, so very important to go on. But back to the point, these drivers, despite the fact they've run this nice stint, they've done well, they haven't been afraid to show their personality and say, I want position, you're not going to take this away from me. Oscar Fredriksson proving that in spades.
You had mentioned earlier about the loss of pace earlier on. I think Eric Smith experiencing a bit of a struggle with his grip out there. You saw him lose some spots coming down the back straightaway as the car just could not carry the speed coming off of 2. Who has got a car set up for the long run? Because now is when you need it.
Well, it's been very consistent from Jesper Eriksson by comparison. His last 6 laps have all been within the 44.1 to 44.2 range. So he's been able to run very nicely with the way he's gone on with Edward Shelley now in 10th position, who's managed to launch his way back up to the group. The split now is with Sebastian Jackson in the 87. Northway's 46 currently the back of the train now in 12th place. So a 12-car tandem here in the Intimidator at the front of this field. So when you're keeping an eye out on where you need to be, if you're in the back half of the main group, I'd say you're doing it right. You're playing the fuel safe game. You're looking to give yourself an opportunity to attack late in the race. Right now, there's no need to be at the front. Keep yourself squirreled away. The quiet drivers are the ones to worry about late on.
Speaking of quiet drivers, Adam Preston maybe trying to be a bit sneaky. The 99 has taken a scheduled pit stop and is back out, but he is now vulnerable because he is a lap down. It's actually bad news for Troy Anderson, if anything, because Preston would get the lucky dog if we get a caution from here. So things getting a little bit interesting as we are seeing at least one kickoff strategy calls.
Yes, and being the first one in isn't always the best place to be. As we look at Kyle Hendricks, this is what he's having to deal with right now in his race after having to take the drive-through penalties, leading a group of Gary Thomas and Andrew Schism. And to pardon the pun, look at the schism that they've got. They're 18 seconds away from any form of other civilization out there.
Yeah, very appropriate for his name, that is for sure. As they've got a lot to catch up, but the race is not over. It's a long ways. And as we've seen, anything can happen when you're racing at Daytona. That's something you've always got to keep in mind. You cannot give up, especially with a bigger championship on the line out there. So there's opportunities that may come. You got to stick with it. Jesper Eriksson leads the way. Trevor Vrosky, who has been leading many of the laps, is now running in second. But Stephen Vervian has returned to the top 3. Last time he tried to take the lead away, it went south for him. What's he going to do this time?
Well, I think at the moment he'll be quite happy leading because he gets to dictate the tempo of this race. I think that Jesper Eriksson has the chance now to just say, this is what we're going to settle into. This is the rhythm that we want. And it's something that in a race like this, it's not as simple as you got 200 laps. Everybody down low, everybody finding blocks, and Eric Smith saying no chance for Pateklis. And here's the reason why he doesn't want that, Joe. if you link the Fusion Gold cars up together, they're going to run in tandem right up to the front. There's a reason why it's taken so long for Oscar Fredriksson to get back to the front and why no driver wants him up there. It's because it will bring the SimRace Sweden esports cars together and they can run roughshod on the top of the field. Vivian now having to be coy and fall back into line. He'll lose out. So now Vavrovsky has got to be very switched on to what happens from a team perspective out there on his own in second.
I imagine he's going to be quite aggressive. Oh, I'm going to eat my words. He does not defend at all. And that allows Ericsson to give a slipstream to Fredriksson once he saw him go low. Poor Vervainen once again shoved way up high with nobody giving him an opening to get back down on the bottom. Although he slingshots off the turn 4 run to the tri-oval very effectively. He's going to hook up with Vavrovsky now.
And look at what the gaps have done from everyone struggling. They've now pulled 5 seconds on the secondary pack led by Bogdan Moldovan and Daniel Thomas. So they've now completely checked out from the group that they've had to work with earlier on in the race. And effectively now, it's these 12 who are deciding what do we want to do with the future of this. 1 and 2 now for SimRace Sweden Esports with Jesper Eriksson finding in. Andrew Schism saying down in the in-game communication he wants to dive in and pit in and make his stop. So I think we've seen some pretty early decisions, and Hendrick's in trouble and Gary Thomas has had to abandon the pits.
Interesting, as we see at least one make it down into the pit lane. We've got just a huge gap there at the back of the field now, or at least in the middle of the field, I should say. Like you said, it's up to 5 seconds, massively running away from the middle of the pack.
Ericsson's pitting.
Oof, very close as well on the exit there, getting the outside wall, one of those Fusion Silver cars.
So Jesper Eriksson's just declared to everyone, I'm pitting in on this lap. He's got the safety blanket in Oscar Fredriksson, who doesn't have to go and follow him into the pits, but it is a very good indicator of what happens when you're stuck out at the front. Can only go to lap 54 and dives down into the pits, and only one will follow. Look how aggressive Eric Smith is on the pits. Has he gone and stolen a march on him as he's walked on down into the pits? No, he's been caught speeding on the gun.
I was going to say it was not a good move for him in the end. Also, you mentioned Gary Thomas missing that pit last time. He barely made it in. Oh, and these cars trying to stop in their pit stalls. On top of it, both pretty much missed. Here's Gary Thomas. Is this the first attempt?
This is.
Yeah, this is the first attempt. Dives out of it, trying to avoid a penalty, but he still takes some pain from it because he lost a ton of time.
Yeah, and especially when you're so far back, it's cost him the lap as well. So he's a lap down effectively in this race too, which would be last thing that he wants in this scenario. No takers this time into the lane, but a move for Robert Northway as he dives through on Alex Smith. There is Jesper Eriksson coming out of the pit, so he'll be a full lap down, and he's got to get up to speed. He can't rejoin the circuit here, Joe, until he passes the blue commitment cone line, which is on the exit of 2.
Yep, so he's got to stay patient here. Getting himself out and onto the back stretch. Now he can really unleash the throttle, but look at cars just zooming by. Even at 170 miles an hour, he still looks like the slow machine.
He does, but he's got to get up to speed as Eric Smith now leaves after his penalty. In comes Alex Smith, and he'll be joined by 2 of his Fusion teammates, Petekalis and Edward Shelley, in trouble, having to try and avoid. He's hit the safer barrier, comes straight back across the circuit, loops it around in the pits and avoids everyone.
Unbelievable. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of that. Remember, these cars, not like the modern next-gen machines trying to stay planted down in under braking. They're going to be a handful. Edward Shelley maybe needed a little bit more practice. Both Fusion and Gold and Silver teams have come in masse.
They have done, so Fusion look like they've got a strategy and they are going to stick to it out there at the moment. We'll take another look. So this is Edward Shelley making the call to dive into the pit. Oh, and the car just goes away from him the moment he touches the brakes. It's like when you go and put down on the brakes, Joe, you got a rubber duck down there underneath it. It's like he had nothing to try and work with. He's done very well to avoid everyone, and that might have also been his fast repair that he's used. Vavrovsky now your leader, as into the pits comes Oscar Fredriksson.
I have questions about who's putting rubber ducks into your footwell.
James Veach.
Okay. All right, so as we check back in with Vrosky, who now inherits the lead once again, still has Partridge and Hutchison chasing him. All three of them owe us a pit stop. In fact, the top 13 still need to come in for a pit. Will we get more green flag stops? Are they going to try and push this? Not for Vrosky. He is in, and yet all of the top three are pitting now.
Yeah, and Hutchinson taking a more conventional line into the pits was very early to 59 miles an hour there to try and get that all stopped up. So I think that was a really telling stop, as almost everyone deciding that they want to dive in and make that call to make those stops. So I think everyone has hit pretty much the limit. It now puts Schmeier in the leading position. So Jeff Schmeier out longer, and then Ray Partridge, who's about 12.5 seconds back, who's down in the pits right now in one of the latest boxes out there. So everybody else is in, apart from Jeff Schmeier, who's the one who can go the longest in the dog bear car.
Yep, he leads the way for now, but he does still owe us a pit stop. I wonder if he was one of those that did take an early stop on the very, very first caution. What happens to Moldovan? Oh, can't get it wound up, and then he has an awkward try at trying to get it back into his pit stall.
Yeah, it's the awkward part of trying to get it back when it's gone wrong, and especially when you're locking up the rears and you put any turn through the tyres, that's going to be where you struggle. Now finally Schmeier comes in, and looking at Oscar Fredriksson, I think he might come out and be your effective race leader, and he's launched his way by Vrosky, and now here comes Jesper Eriksson and Robert Northway, who's really gained in the stops, because he'll be now net third.
And some pain for Wayne Hutchison. He has sped in pit lane on the exit, so he's going to have to make an extra visit down in. And, I thought he was going to try and take it there, but no, he's going to carry on for at least one more lap, it looks like. So you can serve it on your pit stop if you do it on the way in, but on the way out, it's going to be extra difficult.
Well, pain's the word in Wayne's world right now, and he will not be a happy man as Jeff Schmeier exits the pits and now looks to go on to his third stint of the race. So they've grouped themselves back up together again at the front, but there's a lot less drivers than what there were. Tom Guest and Ray Partridge desperately trying to stay clung together to make it 9 drivers up there at the top. We know that Wayne Hutchinson's got to come into the pits, but outside of that, that group has thinned in the pit stop, and there's no surprises why. A couple speeders here and there, and one thing they do have to note is, yes, these are the old times, so to speak, but they still had speed guns in those days.
Exactly. You have to run by the iRacing rules. There's Wayne serving that penalty now. Now, Robert Northway up in this group, he started on the front row. I don't feel like we've mentioned him a whole lot, though. He's kind of snuck his way back into the top. And I'm kind of wondering if he's our dark horse, at least for this initial phase of the race.
I'd look at him. I'd look at Pateklis as well as drivers who maybe you should keep an eye out on, and Tom Guest. Those are the three who have been quiet. They've just been running laps, being near the front, but not necessarily wanting to take that big step over at the front of this race and really launching on forward. I think they've been very quiet, just working through this race, knowing that they're not going to win it now, but they could lose it now if they do something untoward. So very happy to stay where they are at the moment, keep logging in the laps. Oh, trouble, trouble, trouble! Round and almost there, gone. What a save by Aldis Pateklis!
That thing was about 45 degrees around the banking, and somehow he comes away with it. He is down into ninth, but the 666 is still clean. He kept it out of the wall, and he'll at least be able to carry on from here as we come back to just ahead of him, Tom Guest versus Stephen Verveyen. They also got to watch out that they don't lose that front group. Look at the gap up to Smith.
Well, it was Verveyen's contact that caused Pateklis to go around, so no surprises that the gap's been formed because of it, and they have really dropped the time, 9/10 of a second between them. They've got to get right into line. Chris Savalic, who is on at race control, will definitely have had a look at that for Verveyen, and Verveyen might be in trouble if that has been a call for the stewards to come out and get themselves involved. So keep that in mind as down to the bottom goes the move against Jesper Eriksson for Trevor Vrosky. Take a look from Pateklis' perspective. So car there on the inside. Look at this. So it's 2 taps. The second tap saves him, and then full rotation of lock to try and get that through. Oh, this is a very, very lucky boy.
And that was Ray Partridge in that bright blue number 8 that just snuck by in time. I mean, great job from everybody involved to keep that from becoming an accident in our third caution of the day. As we continue to watch Fredrickson lead this front pack, Pavrovsky in behind him as Jesper Eriksson currently sitting in third, is just ahead of Eric Smith, who is a lap down. So that is not a car racing for position, but is trying to hold on to the lucky dog, which he actually is going to be if we get a yellow at this point.
Now, this is where it gets interesting, Joe, because pack mentality has a huge factor on this race. It's very difficult for any group to try and chase down a pack of about 15 to 20 cars. You just get spat out the back like it's the peloton watching the Tour de France. But when you've got a group of 4 or 5 out there who are maybe not working together because you've got one lap car in the mix of it, it's a lot easier to chase that gap down. That's why Alex Smith has a chance to chase it down. For Vian and Partridge will be very happy about that. So too will Tom Guest. The more cars in that lead group, the tougher it is to chase back up to the front.
Love this for our metric friends. We've got the kilometers per hour here. Not used to seeing that on NASCAR coverage, but definitely gives everybody else a sense of just how fast these things are going. And we continue to watch them wobble and wave their way around the racetrack here as they work their way through the banking once again. Definitely not planted cars that are glued to the track. They dance and they bobble.
Well, it's nice to see it in kilometers now, something I'm a little bit more comfortable with, Joe, because I specifically changed my settings on iRacing today into Freedom Eagle units per metric bird.
Yeah, I keep mine on that as well. I have to remember that this is the European region that we're racing in. They do have the Americas region as well later today that will be taking part. Somebody else coming into pit lane back there. That was Andrew Schism. Looks like he's hitting in to serve a penalty, actually.
Yeah, it definitely looks like that, and that could be all manner of different things that he's gone. And it looks like he's got that speeding out the pit, so he's gone back in again, so that will be a third stop. So it's definitely when it rains it pours for him, as he can't get his pit stop sorted and will fall well out of contention after that. But at least for the moment, this is where it gets awkward, because there is every also position for Eric Smith just to go, you know what? I want to be the closest position possible to the leader, and look at what it does for Pavrovsky. It now puts Jesper Eriksson into play with Oscar Fredrickson out there in the front, and it gets awkward here with this group now. It means that you got someone that you don't necessarily want to be battling with. In fact, he's going to try and get his lap back as he goes down to the bottom and says, I've got pace, let's burn it.
Indeed. So he stretches off forward, trying to see if he can run away, stay on that lead lap, which he is temporarily, at least right now. But he's got a whole bunch of hungry cars behind him, including a pair of teammates that are eager to try and put him down a lap again. So he has to rely on that lucky dog. As long as he's ahead of them, he doesn't even need the lucky dog, but the yellow will help regardless. And we're shortly after the pit stop, so not much he can do in terms of strategy-wise from here to keep them behind either. As we now get into lap number 69 of this 200-lap race, we are well into it, more than a third of the way into this 500-miler.
It depends on how nice of a run you want here at this stage of the race. You look around at someone like Eric Smith, who's on the front. I'd do this completely differently, Joe. I would launch myself onto second position and stay there, because you know that you've got the pace now because you're in the main group to try and launch up to Carl Hendricks, who's the next car due to be lapped. And then you can use that position of being second to take that place away and maintain the lucky dog. So I think this is maybe for Eric Smith slightly a bit of an inaccuracy, so to speak, if we were using chess talk out there at this moment in time. But I don't think it's a full-on blunder. I think he's doing something quite clever. It's a group of 4 they're chasing, led by Jay Bonds, with Adam Preston, Jerry Furkolb, and Carl Hendricks, who are all there and all next. So we look now at Edward Shelley. This is the secondary group, and then now 11 seconds off the race lead, the group led by Jeff Schmeier.
It's a ways back. If I remember right, I think Schmeier was our winner last year, if not one of the previous years here at the 500. So kind of a little sad to see him off that far, but not out of it necessarily at this stage. I almost wonder if for Eric Smith, it would make sense not only to be in second place for the reasons you mentioned, but also he could save fuel there as well if he sat behind.
Absolutely, and any chance that you have to save fuel. Right now, this plays right into the hands of Oscar Fredriksson, and I wonder with those two working together, if both of them have the opportunity to save fuel over the course of this run, they're going to be smiling from ear to ear. They were some of the first takers down into the lane, Ericsson and Fredriksson, and they'll be looking around with a smile. Block thrown on Vavrovsky there against by Jesper Eriksson. So it's starting to get dicey around the lap traffic. They're figuring that if we can take a little bit of tow there, we can get the advantage. But Eriksson's role for this stint, I'm rear gunner. I'm going to hold that out. No further action between cars 73 and 666. So they've decided between Vavayan and Patekalis that ultimately there's not much that can be done about that. That was a racing incident.
Gould is still sitting in 11th out there, but he's hooked up with Batten, one of his teammates on the Fusion Gold team, so he's doing okay. Bit of a wag of the finger, though, from the SimRace Sweden guys. They're letting the car number 10 know that he's not going to be able to take this one easily, although they might be able to easily go by that bright green Mountain Dew 556 car. Looking around the outside, sneaking underneath. Vavrovsky decides to try and hook up with Eric Smith. So now the top two fighting on the high side as a lapped car is going to help out Vavrovsky.
Well, Vavrovsky there wasn't sure whether he wanted to dive underneath or just take the tow. He decided to just take the tow, and now that's going to give him the launch that he wants then against Jesper Eriksson. So he falls into line. Fredriksson, no help topside. So Vavrovsky piloting on the back of the Mountain Dew, finds out that he's run out of drink into the wall slightly there on the top. Goes Oscar Fredriksson, and he'll lose out now. Eriksson moves to second. Fredriksson trying to drop down low. Here comes Alex Smith.
It's the Daytona shuffle once again with the order, and they're exactly opposite of how they were before, it seems like. Watch out for Vervayan. Here he comes into the group. Also working on Alex Smith, but they're going to be separated by Eric Smith in between them. The SimRace Sweden car of Fredriksson shuffled all the way down to 5th position just with that one little move.
Oh, and a big wiggle there in the middle of the corner for the lap traffic that falls way out of contention there. Eric Smith having a big scary moment.
He lost so much speed. He is no longer in that group. The only good news for him is that Wayne Hutchison is about 7 seconds back, so it might be a while before he gets caught by the others he's fighting for that lucky dog with. We ride on board with our new leader, Trevor Vavrovsky, now ahead of Alex Smith, with Eriksson being put back into 3rd position. Will we see the orange 73 of Vervayan try to make some moves as well? He's probably been wanting that top spot for some time now.
He has. Remember, he was turned away from that top spot in contact with Hendricks right at the start of this race here, as we're on lap 75 out of 200 and looking to really see that motivation. Here's the issue for Eric Smith. So he just gets caught onto the back and he almost gets sandwiched slightly there. So there's the wiggle. He goes right up to the top of the circuit, does in fact scrape along the barrier. So there'll be an Eric Smith marking there over that Daytona signage that's over there on the right-hand side. But ultimately, that was costly and not needed really, as here comes Eriksson back down to the bottom to get back past Alex Smith and move back into second and challenge for the lead.
I mean, speaking of unnecessary, Smith was aggressive on the defense for Eriksson, and it didn't work in the end, but we were very close to another accident like we had seen for Vervayan in that number 73. A lot of drivers, I know throwing the block is a part of racing here at super speedways with NASCAR, but there's been some moves that to me have been a bit questionable with, 120 laps to go or so?
But this is the thing, not all of these drivers you would call oval drivers. It's what you have with this series as we take a look here at Kyle Hendricks in 24th position, trying to lead this next group and keep the pace up. They're not all oval drivers. Some of them come from the roadside and don't necessarily know as much the etiquette out there. So some drivers are going to be aggressive and are going to start throwing shoulders earlier than what you would normally see in a traditional race out there, for example, with the eNASCAR series, where they all play by the rules and play by the book because they know it's the best way that they go to win. This is a little bit more unconventional, a little bit, I would say, rougher around the edges, but it creates fantastic dichotomies in the race.
I mean, rough around the edges sounds appropriate for this area of NASCAR, if we're honest. We saw in the picture-in-picture, Kyle Hendricks actually close to going a lap down. So from the pole position at the start of this race to things unraveling quickly, he needs some help here pretty soon. He needs that yellow that has just not been forthcoming.
No, it's not been there, and it's because the groups have been fragmenting, and it gets easier and easier when you've got less and less in the group to work with. So that's been the case. There's been a few near misses over the course of this second part of the stint. So they've been looking around and going, well, what's the big hit that we're going to be looking at? There have been some troubles, but they've been largely avoided over the course of this run. And all of these fragmented groups now that have fallen off are in groups of 2 or groups of 3. There's nothing dramatic out there that's massive. Only the secondary group now, which is led by Wayne Hutchinson, I would say, who is a lap down, by the way, I would say is the one that you look at here as the secondary group where something can happen. And even if something can happen, there's 3 Fusion Gold cards in it, so they're all going to be coordinating.
They do seem to be working together pretty well in that little batch there as we watch them pass the tri-oval once again.
Oh, trouble for the lead. Wow,
yeah.
That was close. They had Jay Bonds that they were trying to lap, and I tell you what, Jesper Eriksson had to really get out of the way to try and go through. He was washing up the circuit, thinking he was going to get some tow, and then immediately had to move at the last moment.
Yeah, that was a scary one for the 189, who's thankfully gotten out of the way of that group, although he dove down there in the background for some reason. Not sure what he was doing.
It was contact with Guest.
Struggling a bit. Huh.
So he was going through at 4 there, and on the exit, Tom Guest just effectively buzzed the tower on him.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, that'll cause the car to wobble for sure. More cars in an awkward spot coming off of turn 2 there. That time it's Jerry Forkolb who tries to stay out of the way. Like we said, while you can keep your foot down here, you got to really drive the car. They want to drift up. That's why we've been seeing them scrape the wall on the corner exits.
Smith in trouble. He's grabbed the apron, somehow saves it against Vivian. So that's massive. And it's the lap traffic that's causing this, Joe. This group's going to completely fragment. 2 clear at the moment. And if they've got this all sorted, they might be gone forever.
Yeah, and again, it was that 73 on the opposite end of what he experienced before, finding how tough it is when a car dives in front of you, nearly sending Smith down into the apron. There he is still in 7th, though, and with Ray Partridge. But yeah, like you said, not as many cars together as they were before.
No, they're not. And I think that's actually really quite important to keep in mind, because that group does now form into effectively nothing. And they now have that concern. They now have that worry, and they'll be thinking about, well, what does this group do? They're fortunate enough here, the likes of Oscar Fredriksson and Robert Northway, that they've caught a very accomplished driver in Carl Hendricks as lap traffic now, and they can be a 5-car train. But Eric Smith's the one who's having to lead the charge, along with Preston and Furkolb. Everyone else behind Vivian in 5th position is now 2 seconds off the back of Robert Northway, with not much hope of catching back up. It's now 4 to the floor here in Daytona Beach on lap 82.
Indeed, and we're about a dozen laps away from what we expected could be green flag stops if they stay green here. So we've already had it once, and it definitely shook things up. It is not the big pack that we saw in the early quarter of this race. How much more will it start to split them up as we ride with Kyle Hendricks now, the former pole sitter, actually officially a lap down from the leaders.
Oh, and that's Hawkins Schott, who's there on the right-hand side, grabbing the wall through the corner and on the exit as well, causing all sorts of drama then for the leading group. Avoided that one then falling into calamity, but that's the sort of game that you see. And there was a little okay from Oscar Fredriksson about a lap ago. Kyle Hendricks wasn't willing to let him give up the place, and is there any wonder why as they get close going through? Because that's a car over on the right-hand side that they were trying to lap Michael Hogg. So Hendricks is trying to play the game. I'm trying to keep the lucky dog, and Oscar Fredriksson's going, I want to help my teammate, and he is not very happy at the moment, is the 12, with the amount of passive aggressiveness.
Not something I expected. Oh,
Yeah,
we got a caution. Trying to see who it is. Looks like Jackson, maybe. Sebastian in the 87 car, facing sideways, coming into the tri-oval. Not sure if this involved anybody else. He was on the lead lap, but this is giving maybe a few cars a chance to get back onto the lead lap. I was about to say that I didn't expect lap traffic to be a factor in this race, but we were up to only the top 20 being on the lead lap. So we were seeing more and more cars getting lapped, and that causing a bit of a disturbance for our leaders.
Yes, and now the game changes. I expect everyone to dive in now and take a pit stop because we're so far into this next stint. But that spin from the 87 of Sebastian Jackson. Oh, it's troubles now. Ericsson having to really dive down onto the apron there. Troubles with Cameron Brown. It looked like there in the 42, who was not switched on at all, was letting cars by and through, and the leaders came up to it. And the 42 tried to dive down low, and Ericsson's lucky he spotted it.
Yeah, cars kind of diving to try and avoid the action. Here's what put Jackson into the wall. A little bit of a netcode bump, maybe? No, looks like, yes. That was a netcode bump, though. Oh, and the 7 with a massive hit into the wall. Thankfully kept 4 wheels on the ground, but was in the air for a brief moment. So definitely one that will require some repairs for both cars.
And the thing is that was lap traffic entirely surrounding those Fusion Silver cars out there that all got caught. So that meant that Gary Thomas had nowhere to go, had to take the hit, and it was very dramatic in terms of what was wanted. Now, the lucky dog is going to be Carl Hendrick, so he's going to pick the lap back up again. But you're looking at who's going to be there in the pits right now. Well, it's pretty much everybody who's diving in and looking to make that stop. So Fredrickson makes a stop. Northway makes a stop. Eric Smith is in from a lap down, as well as Hawken Schott, who also jumps in. So this will give a chance then for everyone to fall back into line, get a little bit closer, get that opportunity to run up through. But everybody now is going to be very much switched on because they're now around the halfway stage of this race and realizing that there is still pitfalls out there, even if it does split out and become a long green flag run.
Ooh, Moldovan, did he have a problem as well around the same time? Saves it down onto the... Remember, it's not the modern, now paved bus stop, so he takes a ride coming over the grass. And does he eventually... No, he doesn't quite save it. Looks like the car's... Oh, my goodness. He's had about 5 or 10 tries to save this thing. And finally, it goes around, comes to a halt. And he gets it back facing the right way, coming over the hump there. That's actually the tunnel that allows you into the track.
Well, that's an A+ for effort, but ultimately just couldn't hold on to it. That was like watching a bucking bronco go around there, out there at the moment. That was a case of hold on for your life and hope that it's not going to fall out into troubles. But pit stop cycle now has gone through. Vavrovsky is your race leader by that comparison. And then behind him, Fredrickson, Ericsson, and then Robert Northway will be 4th position. It's a little ways back to Ray Partridge now, who moves himself up into 5th position, but a lot of traffic in the middle, but I doubt that we're going to see that move for some of these other drivers. I think they're going to have to try and work their way around it.
Yeah, so that was lap 79 that incident happened. So I think that was well before the caution, actually. Somehow he managed to keep that from coming out. Maybe it was just out of the way, so they decided not to throw it there. Vavrovsky will return in the lead. No surprise that we saw pretty much everybody pit in there. Is that, like I said, that was close to the end of the stint. Hendricks, though, like you said, going to get his lap back.
Vervine's got an end of line.
Oh, how did that happen?
I believe this would be the protest with Alex Smith out there, which has come through. So I think that might just be the penalty for what's come through with his contact with Smith. So for Vervine, he will now drop to the back of the group, and he's got to do it again.
Wow. What a frustrating day. If he winds up, even with a top 10, I feel like, he should have a pat on the back for that one, because it's been impressive what he's been able to do despite the hardships he's been going through. Now, whether or not he caused them himself, that's for, I guess, the audience to determine there. But regardless, so you can't deny that he's been quick today and been very good in traffic.
He's been quick, he's been good in traffic. The only issue is he's been a little bit friendly to some of his competitors, so he's been handing out, so to speak, his card out there, which says, here's my information, and everyone seems to know who number 73 is here today. That's the only problem. Lights off on top of the pace car, which means we'll be back to running on lap 88 of 200, and that third caution of the day after a long green flag run, I think is going to be a really important one to keep in mind, because these drivers, this could go any one of two different ways right now. Either we get another long green flag run to about lap 150, or we're in it for the slog.
I'm trying to figure out why Kyle Hendricks also has a black flag. I'm looking. Okay, so car 73, yeah, lap 80, avoidable contact. You were correct about for Vian there. I think maybe Kyle sped in pit lane, but when I looked, it was before, the possibility of it was before his stop. So he should have been able to serve that during his stop, but he's come out and has a black flag over him. So very strange stuff going on for the 385 that's got to make life even more frustrating now that he finally gets that yellow he's been waiting for. But we're restarting on lap 88 with Vavrovsky in the lead, and the pace car is in. Green flag is out, and he starts to accelerate away, but look at the teamwork behind him. Both of the SimRace Sweden cars are clearly working together to hold on to the back of that bumper.
Oh, it's like a rash, isn't it, behind Vavrovsky, and that's what he's going to have to deal with all day long. Ray Partridge settles into line in fourth position. The likes of Robert Northway and Garen Batten, who has lost completely to that second group, now given a new lease of life to go out there and attack. It's an important phase now for those who maybe didn't get the chances that they maybe wanted to now leapfrog back into place. Drivers like Jeff Schmeier, for example, really happy about that in the line that they've got, and now they're getting this chance to go forward and attack.
Looking to try and take that lead away from Trevor, who's been so strong here today. Behind them, don't forget about Ray Partridge, back into it after he's had some scary escapes in this race, running in fourth. Again, a longtime veteran of this series. I'll actually have to check to see if Ray has any wins in this series. What do his stats look like? Because if he has, it's been a minute.
Well, it doesn't matter if you've won a long time ago or you've won recently. A win is a win is a win, and he's looking at it. Northway down on the bottom trying to take advantage. That'll move him up into fourth as we take a look from the rear perspective of Trevor Vavrovsky, as a couple different lines starting to be taken. Partridge, Smith, Jeff Schmeiner brings stuff into play. The interesting thing is that the group's now starting to split out around Scott Kukas in the 242 in effectively the mock-up, I would say, army car, which is out there. And of course, there is something to be said about racing around and the army-style cars there, the National Guard car, so to speak. Of course, that's the car that Junior sort of drove to some wonderful successes out there. So there's always a lot of love for the armed forces when it comes to this style of racing.
Yeah, been around for a long time here in NASCAR as a sponsor for sure. Scott Kukas still trying to keep touch with those in front of him, seeing if he can make a move on the 61 of Garen Batten. That is for position right now, but just a better shot off for that Fusion Gold machine. Jeff Schmeier, though, in the Dog Bear car, running up the high side for a brief moment, also working on Smith in his Fusion Gold car and well within touch with the lead group.
Yeah, and that's important because Jeff Schmeier has proven today that he's the one who can run longer than anybody else. So in theory, his pit stop time should be shorter than anybody else late in the race. So keep an eye on him. He could certainly play and be a factor out there at this point. Single file, they run through the entirety of this field all the way back to Brian Scrivener, who is there in the 70 car, losing out the place to Sebastian Jackson after his moment out there. And oh, the 73's just tagged the wall and somehow saves it again. So have to be very careful. And there's a spin, and that's going to be the caution in the background. Surely look at him up and over.
Oh, this is the big one we were waiting for. A lot of cars involved in this one, some up on their lid. Looks like Moldovan may have gotten collected, and it's Steven Vervian who is on his side in this one. So it really has gone awry a number of times. He has to take a tow. Things have just gone from bad to worse for the 73.
Well, it's Vivian who's the catalyst for all of this, because he gets really aggressive on the back of Cameron Brown. He goes out to the right-hand side. He tags the wall as he went through, moves across to the apron, and he just gets a wiggle as he rejoins the circuit. We'll see it now. So he gets close behind, tries to find a gap, hits the wall, then slides down to the inside, has to try and rejoin the circuit once again, grabs a wiggle as he rejoins on the 18 degrees of banking, catches Wayne Hutchinson, and then Vivian finds catch fence.
That leaves him vulnerable there on the side. You can see Moldovan in the background spinning down to the inside. So we'll go to our fourth caution of the day with that one. But this was shortly after our most recent stop, so it should be opposite of what we saw before, with few cars coming in other than those involved. By the way, I had a chance to check up on Ray Partridge and his stats. He does have a single win, but it was last in 2019, so it's been a while.
Oh, if you're waiting 5-6 years for any chance of a victory, you know that you're itching for it. And Vivian here will take an onboard perspective. Look, moves over to the right-hand side, grabs the wall, and is now having to try and fight the steering wheel. Has pretty much got it under control. And look at that, just having to deal with a little bit of movement coming back onto the banking. And then look at that. It's never a good idea when you start seeing the asphalt in front of you, then the crowd, then the sky.
Just not much he could do once it started to spin. It was completely out of his control, and he was a passenger. Vrosky continues to lead. Oh, Trevor is pitting. Okay, we got a couple leaders deciding to come in here.
Well, we've got hardly anybody staying out, actually. It's quite the opposite. Almost everyone's jumped in, except... Oh, missed box for Trevor. That's not going to help his cause. But staying out then, Jesper Eriksson, Oscar Fredriksson, Ray Partridge, and Daniel Holmer stays out there. So only 4 on the leading lap stay out, and 3 of them are Sweden SimRacing esports.
See, this is why I'm a commentator and not a strategist. I had called it completely wrong on this one. Top 5, as you said, stay out. Everybody else in. Maybe to just try and top up, take some fresh tires in case we do get another long green flag run. Because remember, that was the status quo for probably about the first 80 laps or so.
It was, and so now that they got 3 inside the top 4, it becomes a much more difficult game. But with everybody jumping in behind Vrosky, it means that he's basically got a free pit stop, an extra, I would say, 5 to 10 laps on his stint, and he sits down with it. And what's he lost? 5 places? That's recoverable.
Yeah, definitely. I think he could still get back in there. Just unfortunate that this seemed to have happened in this set of stops. So here we got the replay of Moldovan's perspective. Sees the car starting to lose it in front of him. Thinks, okay, I'm good. Things are fine. No, things are not fine.
Oh, caught in the middle of it with everyone in front, and not much that Moldovan can do about it, and falls down to the apron there through effectively the international turn 1 there. So not great for Moldovan's perspective, but getting caught up in that, the one thing you don't want to do is be caught up in someone else's incident, and that is the prime example of wrong place, wrong time.
Sometimes that's just what happens in this style of super speedway racing. You can just be collected in something that was entirely not your fault. You got to keep your wits about you and kind of have a sixth sense of what's going to unfold. You're more predicting what's going to happen than just reacting to what's going to happen. Well,
I tell you what, each and every incident out there, you have to be so up there. You got to be up there and with your wits about you. You've got to make sure that each and every time you are looking at this race and saying, what is my issue out there? Any car that's down there on the bottom, you've got to be alert to where any potential incident can be, because the moment that you don't react to what's going on in front of you, the moment you don't make the right decision, your race is over. This is a case of you're running at over 200 miles an hour, over 315 kilometers an hour at points around this track. One wrong move here, and that is your race pretty much done. Yes, you got a fast repair, but for some drivers, they've already used that, and for some who maybe weren't switched on, accidentally used it at the first pit stop.
Yeah, let me see how many do have that spare car left. Pretty much everybody within the top 15 or so, it looks like, do still have that on hand and are able to carry it. Sebastian Jackson, who we saw in an incident earlier, has used his. He's the highest to have done so in the 87 car. He sits in 16th. And then you get down to the bottom of the field where there's a whole bunch of them that have already gobbled up that safety net, unfortunately.
Well, that safety net's gone, but, you know, you got to have to try and manage without a safety net for the final 105 laps of the race when we resume. Pace car will be due to come in this lap with those in the SimRace Sweden esports team 1, 2, and 4, and happy with where they are right now.
Certainly looking good. This is pretty reminiscent of what it looked like a lot of last season in 2024 for the majors. SimRace Sweden became the dominant force out here. Will they remain that way here into race 2 as the green flag is out for the majors intimidator and Ray Partridge attempts to break up that hegemony?
Yeah, and we'll lose out because they coordinated the restart again and done so very well. Up on the top is Garen Batten, who knows a thing or two about finding the right time to make that move. But 1, 2, and 3, they find themselves here at the front, and it's the rest of the group who's now got to try and navigate and negotiate their way through. Vavrovsky up there on the top. Remember, he's got slightly fresher tyres. They've gone through the cycle a little bit, and look at the push on the top lane. Garen Batten finding himself then to the race lead, but can he hold it here on the uber extreme top line, heading out of 3 and through 4, and it's going to be a race to the line, but Garen Batten, mark him down, he's going to be your leader.
Launched to the top spot there by Trevor Vavrovsky, working together with one of the Fusion Gold cars. Might not be his teammate, but needs whatever help he can get in this situation. Batten's not going to turn that one down. Look at him pull the lead, actually.
Well, it's important now. He's going to try and break away and do what he wants. He goes all the way down to the bottom, trying to keep it too wide for as long as he possibly can. So Vavrovsky went, oh, come on, I gave you all the help to get up there, and you're not going to want to put me in a position to be second with the likes of Jesper Eriksson there. That's going to be a little bit of something to keep in mind, that there's little games that start getting played. But a good drive off of 4 there by Vavrovsky. And remember, he's got a rocket ship out of 4, and look at it start to launch.
Here we go. SimRacing Sweden back up to the rear bumper of Garen Batten. This time in the form of Eriksson on the bottom side, but has to back off now that they reach turns 1 and 2. Just not able to hold on to the rear of that car. You do get that aero wash in these machines as one of our Fusion Silver cars stays out of the way at the bottom. Vavrovsky returns to P2. We're going to see another push?
No. We're not going to see a push, I don't think, but what we are seeing is actually Dan Holmer has really dropped down the order here. He's fallen pretty much now down to 10th place. Remember, on the restart 2 laps ago, he was 4th on that restart, so he's lost 6 places in 2 laps, and it just goes to show you confidence. It is a major, major point of contention. If you've got confidence out there on the track and you can go out there and be aggressive with a couple moves, you can be absolutely making the places early on, and especially in the final couple of laps. Keep an eye on who's making moves. Little tag on the wall by Oscar Fredriksson. Here comes Ray Partridge for 4th.
Yeah, speaking of that confidence, if you're Robert Northway, you got to feel it here. I already mentioned he started on the front row. He's still in the top 10, but apparently he was 2nd in the international split. You are allowed to compete in multiple of these regions here in the majors. And also, they have the duels that they run, just like the real thing. He had 3 second places. Here is a driver that is clearly very good at this style of racing, maybe just waiting, biding his time.
Well, you can't win this race now. You just got to buy your ticket to the end, and we are now officially here on lap 100, so this is the halfway stage of the race, Joe, and I think this has been a story about who's kept themselves out of trouble and who's positioning themselves for the right move at the right time. Back there, Hawkins shot, getting right down underneath the apron as they went through, but it's been a day of Vavrovsky and Eriksson have been the 2 starlets in the first half of the race, but Garen Batten right now has got the baton, so to speak, and he's trying to run with it.
Trying to batten down those hatches for sure and really get his foot in it, as Jeff Schmeier is in there now as well. I mentioned a former winner here in the Intimidator. Could he get number 2 in that number 30 machine, currently riding behind Ray Partridge? It's starting to be interesting to see the change in complexion at the lead. Who are the players up at the top?
Yeah, this is an ever-evolving game, and I think that the different cautions and strategies have certainly been playing that card quite handily out there. The likes of Scott Kukas now in the main group. Robert Northway finds himself into play. You got Eric Smith, who is still a lap down, but the first of those a lap down. He's working with Carl Hendricks at the moment in their battle to try and get onto the leading lap. So there's many different games. Alex Smith going down low now there in the goal, trying to join up with his teammate Garen Batten up there at the moment, and he just is now in the middle of this. Jeff Schmeier knows how to play this game, and he just takes that slightly wider line, gives a little bit of turbulence there down on the bottom, making it just a little bit tougher to make the move.
Still going to go for it as we ride on board with Smith, hooking up now with Ray Partridge on the bottom side, leaving Jeff Schmeier up on the high lane in his dog bear machine. And look at this. Here comes Trevor Vavroski taking a peek underneath Garen Batten, then gets back in line with him, but he's thinking about trying to get that lead away.
Well, I just heard word there as they went through. Garen Batten's just said, I think I've run over a tyre. And Northway was immediately on the radio saying, I'm not the only one who saw that then. We didn't see it from our perspective, but from their perspective, iRacing damage model coming into play. And if Garen Batten's hit a tyre, then he's going to be looking and going, well, do I have any damage on my front? At the moment, it looks squeaky clean, so I think he's all right.
Yeah, I think once a tire has been separated from a car for quite some time, it becomes invisible to them. Now, that was just a quality of life improvement from a few years ago from iRacing with the new damage model, just because it was because of netcode and things being a little bit unpredictable. They didn't want too many cars to wind up getting phantom damage out there. So, yeah, I think he should be okay. Another little look from the 10 of Trevor Vavroski as he continues to show himself and remind the 61, I am still here.
Yeah, he can't be quiet in that position. He's just got to be alert. And now he starts bump drafting. So this is, that'll be why. Bogdan Moldovan having a massive hit right at the back of the group. And no caution comes out from that because no cars in the vicinity. And that is pretty much as big as it gets.
Yeah, that was a big thunk into the wall. That is for sure. So Moldovan, is that him already? Yeah, he's already taken his free repair, so might have to say goodnight unless he wants to try and cruise around at the back for about half of this race. And look at that. We are single file now, finally, once again at the front of the group as everybody stays in line through 1 and 2.
And this is a group that's, I would say, going all the way back now. As Garen Batten, we take a look from behind. I think the first real split out there is with David H. Baker at the moment to Daniel Thomas, 13th and 14th. David H. Baker, who knows how to quietly go about the business and has been one of the most participated drivers of this series. So he's seen it all, he's done it all, and he's looking around at it and saying, I've got a really good shot of doing what I can out there to make this race hold. Now, the 11 lap down Stephen Vivian has just been given a 30-second stop hold for an unsafe re-entry, which had been the one that caused the caution. So he will now have a 30-second hold. But look at this in the middle. They're fanning.
Yeah, interesting to see them start to make some moves out there, including some of the Fusion Gold cars, Pateklis and Edward Shelley. Pateklis, who used up one of his 9 lives there earlier on in the race, not giving up and still holding on to the lead up into the wall. I think that was Eric Smith once again in the... is he still in a lap car, or is he caught?
Yeah, he's still lapped.
Oh, boy.
So him and Hendrick are working hard. And look at this down low for 3rd place. A big power move by Alex Smith. Gets it done on Jesper Eriksson, who will feel like he saw a ghost after that move came through. Wonderful big move down. Hendricks is a very interesting case because he's trying to make sure he can confirm the lucky dog if it comes through, or even failing that, move on to the lead lap of the race. So he's making progress, and he'll be interrupting, along with Smith here, the main flow of those at the front of this field.
Yeah, we are still at about 8 cars or so that are a lap down looking for that lucky dog to try and get back into it. There's the replay for Eric Smith. Who, things are getting, once again, quite sketchy up at the front. Credit to the drivers. There have been so many moves that I would consider ill-advised, but we've only had 4 cautions so far, and I shouldn't have said anything. Make that 5 now.
Yeah, that will do it, and ultimately not what we want to be seeing out there. A 5th caution on the day, and it looks like Vivian's in the pits, Moldovan in the pits. It's Troy Anderson who's down on the infield, so I think Troy Anderson is the car that found himself involved in it, and it looks like he just went down, he caught the apron, and that was the drama that found himself involved. So car 22 is the one that finds the caution out there, and he had to really scrabble about.
I mean, look at this. It took him about a half a lap to save the car. Watch this. Gets it back going one way, and then he's into the grass. Car still sliding around, not completely under control. Thinks, okay, I got it now. Then as soon as he comes back onto the pavement, good night.
Oh, and that's the worst feeling out there, because he's gone drifting about for the run, and he's just a couple weeks too late there, Joe, for the Daytona 24. I think that's just the only issue he's run into there. It was a perfect turn 1.
Yeah, exactly. Moldovan also been getting a black flag, I think, for the incident that we saw him involved in a little bit earlier, but he's still in pit lane awaiting repairs, so it's a bit of a moot point for him. Ericsson on our screen, still running in the 4th spot. Now they slow up once again as we've had a spate of cautions here over the last 30 or so laps. We're on to 109 of this race, so still plenty left to go.
So Smith's coming in, Ericsson's coming in, there's thoughts that Vavrovsky wants to come in and will do, and everybody is realizing that, you know, it's a tick-a-day parade, effectively, with how they're trying to do the pit stops. The tyres are so good for 10 laps, and then they fall into this plateau of about a second and a half adrift, that if you go anywhere beyond 5 laps, it's more beneficial to come in and make a pit stop.
Yeah, it does seem to be the popular call here. Just give up a little of the track position, even if you have to, because most people are going to come in and try to utilize this time. But it looks like, yeah, nobody stays out amongst the group. I was trying to see, it was just lapped cars trying to get their lap back. Robert Northway there at the front. Where is he going to emerge in all of this? First car to get out is Garen Batten, but it was a close one there, down for second place, 3 wide on the exit. Looks like it's Fredrickson, Smith, and Ericsson.
Oh, big loser, Trevor Vavrovsky, and all of that. He lost a bucket of time as he tried to go in, so he's taken a very long stop here trying to get all of his service sorted. I think this is a big heavy fuel load that he's put into the car, 90 laps away from the end of this race. I doubt that he's going to make it all the way that far on fuel, but that is a big amount of time that he's lost in the stop. He's now mired in the mid-pack.
So the farthest we've seen of anybody, I believe, is about 43 laps so far. So that's kind of our baseline that we imagine is the limit for the fuel at this point. Doesn't seem like it's been tire limited, although there is quite a bit of drop off, which makes you wonder if the undercut towards the end is a viable strategy if we get a lot of green flag racing.
I certainly think it is. If where they are right now, this is a borderline one-stop race from this point onwards. If they are playing the fuel save game, you can just about make it home with one stop from here. The issue you're going to run into is you need a lot of help to do so. So it might be a splash and dash style finish to this race where you don't even take tyres. You just go, you put a tiny amount of fuel in, and then you just get out and drive it. That might be the way that this race ends if it goes green from here. But as egos start to bring themselves into play, as tempers start to rise, and the closer they get to the end of this race, I think we're going to be in a position here where everyone is looking around at everyone else and what are they doing. And I think that we're going to see drivers drive closer. We've seen a couple there, a hook almost gone wrong on Alex Smith over that last stint. So I'm sitting down, I'm looking at it going, I don't see this one going green the entire way through. This is about positioning.
So here's the real question then for you, Jake, because if it is possible to get it on one more stop, you're going to have to be saving from the very start of it. And from what we've seen from these leaders, that's a bit of a tall ask. Everybody's been super aggressive. So depending on where you are in the pack, Do you try that from the very beginning? Do you start saving that fuel? Or do you just say, no, I'm not going to try and go for that gamble. I'm going to go flat out?
There is a very big sweet spot for this strategy to work here, Joe, and that, I think, is if you are somewhere between 5th and 8th, I think it works. If you're anything further back than that, you're worried about the split, so you've got to get forward into the top 8 positions before you start. Anything further back from that, you know, you're in trouble. If you're at the front, you're pushing at the front. You're not going to get that luxury of being able to sit there. So I think it's actually a really tough position to make it work. And it's someone like Ray Partridge or Jeff Schmeier who's going to have the luxury of doing this. Everyone else, I think, is on a 2-stop.
They're lined up, ready to go. The lights are out on the pace car. And we have only lost, it looks like, 1 car so far. Moldovan has still been sitting, taking repairs. Not sure if he intends to return or not, but still 31 on the track right now. Impressive this deep into the race that we've kept everybody on the circuit. So as Garen Batten will once again be given control, pace car is indeed in. Fredriksson to his outside, hooked up with Ericsson behind him. It is Fusion versus SimRace Sweden, but Fusion gets the jump. Only one of the cars, though, the 15 of Alex Smith, going nowhere.
Well, look at that for a bit of tandem racing. It went Fusion from Sweden, and they're all there and trying to work. Batten is gone, and now it just leaves Alex Smith to try and defend on his own against the 2 teammates there on the top side of the circuit. So a lot to work with. Partridge there in the middle, and now look at the 4 cars out there which are trying to work, because you've got Edward Shelley starting to make progress, and then Uldis Pateklis, who had that crazy save earlier on in the race. So those 4 at Fusion, they got a big chance. But look on the top side, because you got the likes there, of course, of Robert Northway and Trevor Vavrovsky. They both have been near the front all race long, and they're starting to look. Here we go.
Was a big shove on the backstretch from Alex Smith coming down to the end of the straightaway. Really wanted to try and push Batten back forward, but they are not as successful as the SimRace Sweden team. Fredriksson and Ericsson have been just almost line astern, formation flying here at the front, and it is going to get them the lead once again. Just so much better. Meanwhile, from behind, looky here, Robert Northway suddenly enters the chat.
And here's the big thing about that move. They took the middle. There was a high line, there was a low line. They took the middle, they got the best of both worlds, and they rocketed up now into 5th and 6th positions respectively. They're now trying to break up this group, and if they leave enough room, top and bottom, they'll just take the middle.
Ooh, and they're going to take the bottom, Will Fredriksson and Ericsson, as they dove in front of Garen Batten with very little room. We've seen that go awry earlier on in this race, so that was brave. And Trevor Vavrovsky is the one to pick up the high side, checking in behind Robert Northway now.
Yeah, definitely looking for each and every opportunity now to move nearer the front. And SimRace Sweden Esports have been so good at playing the game of running roughshod from the front of this field, be it Fredriksson, be it Ericsson. It's been one of the two, and they haven't been saying it's one of us, it's both of us that you have to worry about here in this race. Fredriksson, your leader currently. Jesper Ericsson finding himself in 3rd position. Robert Northway there in that 2nd place is trying to really find any opportunities to attack, but now falling back into line. The 61 comes back into play. Batten on the low side, looking for 4th.
In fact, it looks like the Fusion Gold car is a bit hung out to dry compared to that high line, which is forming up with a train of 4, although Vavrovsky now with no place to go, can't duck down to the bottom. He's the one that's out of luck. So coming off the corner, will it switch back around once again as we see an ebb and a flow? 3 Fusion Gold cars, 4 of them actually, here in the top group. If they get hooked up, that's bad news for everybody else.
It will be, because effectively you get a freight train and they are going to want to motor. Unfortunately for them, they're losing the caboose here behind Scott Kukas. That is, and Jeff Schmeier. That's Edward Shelley, who's struggling to maintain the pace. But Pateklis, we know, has been really quick in the early stage of this race. Garrett Batten's quick, and so too is Alex Smith, who's been throwing out everything that they can, and he's been the one who's effectively been the enforcer of this entire group. Caution though, let's forget all of it. It's a big one with Cameron Brown.
He is up to the high side of the track through 3 and 4. Down on the bottom side, it was a massive hit for Brian Scrivener. And then the 87, oh no! That
massive.
Was, oh my goodness. Sebastian Jackson thought he was clear, but there were cars coming, and he just got T-boned.
It's what happens here. It's an incident in stages, and you can't really do anything about it. It's a really dangerous game when you get yourself caught up in incidents like this, and a massive hit going on through. And it's Cameron Brown who is just completely caught out to it, and that's one of the few incidents you look at and go, well, thank goodness it's SimRacing, because that car would be torn apart to shreds otherwise.
Really. And Cameron probably would have had even less control, because remember, he was one of those that was initially involved. So he was just trying to limp his way back to pit lane, and then suddenly a car pulls right in front of him as he's trying to escape all of that. I wonder if that's also going to be a penalty for Jackson for an unsafe re-entry, just not really watching to see whether or not he was clear to start moving in that situation. So we get caution number 6 now for our drivers, and definitely a few of them having to pop in for repairs. But for these drivers, it is a somewhat scheduled stop here, Jake.
Well, 3 have stayed out, which are Fredrickson, Ericsson, and Putekelis, who stay out. Pretty much everybody else has decided to come in and make a pit stop, except for those a lap down like Wayne Hutchinson and Eric Smith. So 3 staying out, everyone else liking their tyres and deciding they're going to play strategy around it. And each and every time you continue to count on what's going on, it's about who's getting into position. Drive to keep an eye out on. Car 385, Carl Hendricks, will take another look at this. This is Jerry Furkolb's perspective of it. So Jackson goes in front, gets air underneath and finds the catch fence and just about has to avoid it. There's secondary contact that goes around, and there's the spin that brings the 87 in. So all the silver cars, wrong place, wrong time. And then here's the launch, try and go, and then it's just one of those where you're just so desperate to get away from the scene of the accident, so to speak there, Joe, and you just forget that you've got to look in your left-hand side view to see where is the car coming.
Yeah, and that's where he got run into in a big way. Hello, Kyle Hendricks is now back in the top 10. This has been a long time coming, and the car looks in good condition, but he has not taken his spare car. The plot thickens. We know he's quick. He started on the pole in this race, unfortunately got involved in an incident that caught him out with a penalty afterwards. That's what sent him backwards, put him a lap down, but he has fought his way back and is now finally with the top group. So what's this going to look like now that he's involved in all of this? Because he is a bit of an unknown compared to all the other drivers we've been watching up at the front. And on top of it, doesn't look like he's involved in any particular team. Remember, there are drivers who can come in and compete in the majors sort of as a one-off effort, just as a specialist if they find themselves good at a certain car and track combo. They're not necessarily competing for the championship, but they will try and see if they can maybe take a win, which is sometimes difficult because, frankly, the majors tends to bring out some of the best on iRacing, and it is very difficult to try and snag wins. I have to check to see what the total number is up to in terms of number of winners in the majors, but considering how many years it's been going on, it's not as high as you'd think, thanks to Christian Challoner definitely taking a whole bunch of those, and I think still holding the most wins of anybody in the championship. Looks like the pace car's got the lights off, so we're going to get back to racing once again. See a penalty for Eric Smith, and I think that may have been for speeding in pit lane because I don't see that being handed out by race control. So that must have been an automatic one handed out by iRacing there, Jake.
Yeah, it does look that way. And Eric Smith, who was so desperate to get back onto the leading lap with his pit stop, has now fallen back into line, and now with that penalty, it's really going to hurt him, and now they're looking. So car 42 apparently is under review right now for lap 116, so that would be Cameron Brown who will be the driver under review then for that incident. Not really surprised about that being looked by the stewards, but with Fredriksson, Ericsson and Pateklis all in play, it's now Trevor Vavrosky in fourth who will be there to lead the chase, along with Edward Shelley. And I wonder whether drivers are looking around and actually starting to think about taking 2 instead of 4, and that's maybe why we're seeing some differences out there, maybe just changing right-hand side tyres, because they're not really getting much use out of the lefts.
Yeah. Shelley and Hendricks both with short stops out there. Vavrosky as well, it looks like. Remember, back in the days, in the 80s, they were a lot longer pit stops, over 20 seconds to try and get all 4 tires and fuel in there, so you can save a lot of time. As the green flag is out once again, SimRacing Sweden hooks up immediately with the top 2 behind them. Pateklis and Shelley also able to, take that back. Look, do we get 3 of them in line in the same team, or am I mistaking? Yes, I am. That is Hendricks, actually, who's a similarly painted car.
Oh, and Hendricks had to be careful because he very nearly tags Trevor Vavrosky around coming out of 2. So he had to get right onto the binders, and now that brings Ray Partridge into play. Here comes the run then from the Fusion Gold that go through, and Pateklis now will look to make his first stint at the front of the field. Pateklis to the point. Oscar Fredriksson, not much he can do on the top side.
They all come off of turn 4, trying to position themselves where they want to be. Hendricks with a big shot up the high side is going to take 1, maybe 2 by the time they get down into turn 1, looking for P3. He's right now going alongside the SimRacing Sweden contingent and still has the speed. The car is strong. Can he even take the lead away from Pateklis?
Well, that's what he wants, and it's been a 100-lap journey from losing the race lead to gaining it back again. What tenacity by Kyle Hendricks to move himself to the point, and saying he is very happy with where he's placed. But Pateklis isn't going to give this one up. Neither will the duo of Fredriksson and Ericsson, with Edward Shelley just waiting in the wings there in 5th.
I mean, you got a couple Swedes, a Central Eastern Europe driver in there, UK and I here in this top group. And then the driver from the Mid-South says, here we go, boys, let me show you how it's done. Fights back to the top and even pulls a gap at first.
Yeah, he gives himself a little bit of a margin, but now he basically bottoms out through the middle. And remember, that damage on the right-hand side that he picked up from the incident, of course, right at the very beginning with Vivian, he's still not got that fully repaired, so he's still driving damaged.
By the way, we mentioned car 42 under review. They have been given a black flag for avoidable contact, so we'll be seeing them in shortly, no doubt. Still running the low line, Kyle Hendricks, now that he's gotten past Fredriksson, who tries to regain that lead. Trevor Vavrosky hooking up with that 385 momentarily. Things once again, as they have for much of this race, really erupted at the front.
I tell you what, Carl Hendricks is having a blast. He took the bump draft from Trevor Vavrosky. He was on the radio and he went, whee, this is perfect. I'm getting a bump draft. I'm leading this race. This is everything I could possibly dream of. And he's now looking at trying to maintain that with Vavrosky, moving himself up into second position, 1 and 2. And this is where you're starting to see that the SimRacing Sweden cars are going to struggle because they chose not to take service.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that they are on a different strategy here. If we get some green flag racing, that could definitely switch things up. We should very much be one to go for those who just stopped, though, in terms of pit stops for the remainder of this race. Unless we get multiple cautions, then we could probably see multiple pit stops from them. But we'll have to wait until we reach that bridge. In the meantime, Vavrosky catching up to the back of Hendricks, but not actually pushing once he gets there.
No, and I think he'll be managing the engine temperatures out there of his car right now, because he knows that if he decides that he wants to just push on the back, there's going to get no air in through the front, and air is going to be really important for the engine. Those oil temperatures are going to rise, and if the engine go boom, then that's the end of the race pretty much, and that's the last thing that these drivers will be looking at. It's 4 out there in the front, and a bit of a gap now forming to Pateklis and Ray Partridge, who are desperate to try and stay with. Robert Northway trying to bridge the gap right now, and all of these drivers are thinking about, well, how do we bridge these gaps and move on forward with these places? This is a very, very tough race out there, and they know that they're soon heading to endgame in about 25 laps time.
And just an update, I'd mentioned that I thought Moldovan may have been our first retirement. Not the case. He's repaired the car. He's back out, running 32nd, about 26 laps down from the lead, but staying with it. I do love to see drivers stick with the racing here, even if they are not in contention for a good result today. Brown, in the meantime, has just taken his penalty as he comes in to serve that. We continue to keep our eyes on the top group. Hendricks, now that he's gotten to the front, has not relinquished it.
No, that's very much the case. I wonder if Moldovan's trying to get through 75% race distance in order to score points here today. I think that might be something that he's trying to eye up with the long context of a championship in play. But on board with Oscar Fredriksson at this moment in time, Joe, I am loving the fact that they're able to maintain that pace. They're not looking to try and go out there and be overly aggressive right now. If they spend a couple laps behind Vavrovsky and Hendricks, then they've got a really good chance to make something happen of this race later on. I think they're going to be the first two to come down in and make a stop, and if they can do that with 45 laps to go, I think they're in with a shot, but they're going to need a little bit of help, because I think they're on a strategy that doesn't work compared to everyone else around.
Certainly looking like that. Whoa! Brush of the wall or something there. That was Jesper Eriksson, who just kind of dove to the side. Ray Partridge having to take avoiding action, and he gets tipped. He's into the wall hard. No caution yet as it's pointed forward. Now he spins across the track, and he gets hit by Vervayan again.
Still no caution, though. So that's doubly depressing for Jesper Eriksson, because he just got off the circuit as he broke through. So no caution called for that, as he was trying to stay out of the way. Vervayan took the hit, but Jesper Eriksson, a day where he's been right up at the front of the field, and it's gone.
It just all unravels in the blink of an eye with the slightest small move in this style of racing. You have to remember, you're going so fast that you're many football fields a second across the pavement. Here's the replay in the upper right of Eriksson. The initial touch with the wall, I mean, that alone was kind of strange, but then I think it's a bit of net code here that kind of seals the deal.
Yeah. Trying to make that push through with Robert Northway. Yeah, and that's all it takes. It's a nothing piece of contact as he goes through into the wall, goes straight across the circuit, takes 2 taps, and one of them from his own teammate, Daniel Holmer, I believe it was, and the 37 car finding himself turned around. And look at what it has done to the front of this field. It is 5 clear at the front, Pateklis in no man's land, and Alex Smith now having to lead the second train.
Certainly had a pretty distinct effect, and this could be good news for those top 5 if they can just continue to play well together, which has honestly been the case on this latest restart. It's been a little bit less hectic than what we've seen at the front earlier on, which is not what I expected. I figured 130 laps in, we'd start to see it crank up. Instead, it has done the reverse and cooled down a bit.
It has, and this is good for those in the top 5, because they know that they just want to log some long laps in, and this is what's giving them that opportunity to do so. And now if you're Ray Partridge or you're Robert Northway, you're in the perfect position, because you can just sit and try and play the strategy card to try and win this race. Those drivers here, 1, 2, and 3, Carl Hendricks is in a really tough position, and he's now going to have to try and roughshot his way from the front of this field to try and win this one. It's an almost impossible task that he's got to try and manage, and if they're not careful, it's going to be worse. We'll take a look from Stephen Vervayan's perspective here. So car up the top, starts sliding. So there's Holmer's view of it, and through the smoke, you just got to guess, and he takes a tap, and not only does he take a tap, he takes the black and orange mechanical flag, which says, "I have to be back down on the pits."
much like a whale falling to the ground, he says, "Oh no, not again." And off he goes to get the repairs done. As they come around 3 and 4 once more, Vavrovsky giving chase on Kyle Hendricks, and the drivers slot into their comfort zone to try and tick off the laps. I think Puteklis might be able to make this a 6-car train. He's starting to catch up to them.
Yeah, 43.9 by Pateklis compared to a 44 flat from Robert Northway. So he pulled a 10th, and now he gets a big toe, and now it's a 6-pack challenge here at the top end of this field. Alex Smith has a full second to try and chase, and this is where it gets a little bit awkward. One more car to the train continues to make it more difficult for the cars behind. Little peek out there from the likes of Oscar Fredriksson, just trying to give himself a little bit of air underneath what he's trying to work with at the moment, and he's hoping that this is going to play into his factor between now and the end. And here's something for you right now. It is Chevrolet leading Ford, leading Buick.
Like to see that they've got some spread there. Now, for those that aren't familiar, these cars physically in the sim are the same. So there's really no advantage between picking these cars. But there is definitely some pride and some ego, because as we know in NASCAR, there are those who are diehard fans for certain manufacturers. So that's going to be important to them to try and bring this one home. But Kyle Hendricks definitely showing that you don't have to be a regular in this series. And if anything, I think really proving that there's skill in this racing. I feel like sometimes those who are not familiar with this style of racing, Jake, think, oh, it's just foot to the floor. You're just not really driving the car. It's all chance and it's a gamble. No, there's something to be done as we get another yellow. Who's causing this one?
Well, that's a good question. It's big on the front stretch, it looks like. So someone's gone in hard over the start-finish line, and I think it's the 2-4-2 of Scott Kukas, who's the driver who's been caught up in it. He's had a massive moment all on his own.
So caution number 7 now, and yeah, interesting that these yellows seem to be brought out at times lately by a single car. But him coming to a halt on the racing line, they had no choice but to bring out that yellow. And Kukas took the tow in the end. He was already in a bad position. And actually, I'm seeing had a black flag, which is interesting.
Well, this will be why, because he technically goes through the cone. And so that'll be an unsafe pit entry for the way he's gone through, or anything, speeding on pits, technically. And that is possibly the worst luck you could have if you're Scott Kukas, having to deal with a penalty on top of it like that, because he just clips the cone as he goes through. No way of stopping it. And there's a reason why there's so much runoff on the infield to try and make sure that there's no dramas of an incident, because someone like Scott Kukas, well, he needed all of it and then some.
Yeah, and just feet over that cone. If he was a little bit more to the right, he would have been okay on this one. Lap 135, and we slow down once again. We're almost to the final quarter of this event.
And now that means, Joe, that these drivers are now thinking about their end game. They're thinking about points. They're thinking about their places and who is gaining. At the moment, we got 3 drivers who started outside of the top 20 in this field, inside the top 10. Daniel Thomas, for example, running the Casey Kane Bud style car out there, the 60. He's up from 28th on the grid. Almost everybody taking that decision to come into the pits, make that stop and go again. And you're looking around at who's gaining here. Wayne Hutchinson will gain the Lucky Dog back, and then you need 4 more if you're Jesper Eriksson to move back into Lucky Dog. So he's hoping for a little bit of a green flag run, not a long one, to put himself back into position. But this is where the pit stops become important, and who's gaining what is needed out there. Tyres going up then, and you can see right sides there for the 385, and we'll soon see left side tyres hopefully go up. You can see them dropping, but it looks like, yes, there go the left side tyres. And so a full 4 on this next run, of course, with unlimited tyres. They're not really worried about how much they burn up the Goodyears or the Eagles, so to speak. So Trevor Vavrosky then leaving the pit, second position overall then with that decision. Fredrickson in third, and then it would be Alex Smith who's really gained. He's gone from 7th to 4th there over the course of the pit stop. So the Fusion Gold Euro car has certainly done what's needed. Jeff Schmeier looked pretty punchy in the pits as well. He was able to gain the advantage that was wanted also. So you've got to keep in mind these drivers who are all thinking about, well, how do we go through? And you are going to also start seeing here these drivers who are a lap down decide not to dive into the pits immediately. And the reason why they don't want to dive immediately in for their service is because they want to gain their lap back. And so by making sure that they run around here in this section, they effectively gain their lap back by everyone else pitting and forming behind. So they'll look to then run through past the pace car and then give themselves that opportunity to say, you know what, we're ahead, but we'll take our pit stop a little bit later on in order to fall back into line and comply. So it's a way of them moving back onto the leading lap, but someone like Jesper Eriksson, for example, definitely needs to make that progress. But it's been a day of ups and downs for the likes of Carl Hendricks. Oscar Fredrickson has been up near the front the entire time. So too Trevor Vavrosky. And then the quiet drives, the likes of Ray Partridge, Robert Northway you can put into that mix as well. And then the up and downs for the 4 cars which have been out there pretty close together from Fusion Gold. So there's a lot to deal with out there as we are under caution right now. And this would be period on lap 137 of 200 here on the Global Sim Racing channel, here brought to you by, of course, the Majors Series, and getting a very, very good run out there at the moment. So we will be seeing here who will get that chance, and these drivers all now getting that opportunity to move on forward with the pit cycles, and those gaining back the lap by being in front. So the likes of Adam Preston, Håkan Schott, and Jesper Eriksson now move back onto the leading lap, but they will now fall to the back of the pack. The lights off on top of the pace car, and that means we will be moving forward to lap 138 here of 200, which, Joe, as we sit right now, Jesper Eriksson's lucky he's got his lap back, but he's now got to go from 22nd.
Yeah, he's going to have to do what a number of drivers have done. So we know it's possible, but it has definitely caused some woe for a few of them, including Vervine, who's now officially a retirement. Both he and Cameron Brown are actually out of this race. Gary Thomas might also be out of this one because I see him grayed out on my timing and scoring, but he doesn't have the official DNF next to him on our entries list. So he might still be coming back into it to try and finish it out. But it's definitely changed from how it looked early on in this race. We kind of expected to see some comers and goers throughout the race. And Kyle Hendricks has come up to the front to try and retake the lead from where he started this whole thing and see if he could bring it home to the checkers. Vavrosky next to him as the pace car is in and looking for that call. There it is. Green flag is out. This time, Oscar Fredrickson, without his buddy next to him, what can he do solo?
Well, that's the key. He's got to do this now on his own and use his talent and his skills and not have to rely on his teammate Vavrosky with a pretty decent launch by comparison. But this is where the low side works, and Carl Hendricks has got himself a nice launch, but not the greatest launch out there. We've seen that the best launches come from Garen Batten out there, but now look on that top side, because this is where you're starting to see it here. Smith falls into line. So too does Jeff Schmeier moving up into 5th position. The bump comes in for Trevor Vavrosky to now try and run around the outside for the lead. That doesn't work. Hendricks still holds through 3.
As he ducks down to the bottom side, Smith trying to line up with everybody else now, and they'll complete their first lap back under green on this latest of restarts. Everybody gets stacked back up because the top 6 had managed to run away. Gives so many drivers back there a breath of fresh air knowing they're still in it once again. But watch out on that number on your upper left for lap 160. That's the point at which every driver is going to know they can make it to the end from there, depending on if we stay green.
Well, it's can they make it safely there to the end? That's the key. Well, it doesn't matter about cautions or anything like that. I reckon they're good from 150 if they get a couple cautions. So they'll be counting those laps down and running at reduced speed. Remember, no green-white checkers here in this series, in this run at the moment, because it's old school. We're in 87s. There were no green-white checkers. Back then, the only green-white checker you get is when you get a caution and you go back to green with 2 laps to go. So back on that high side goes Trevor Pavlovsky, and look at Jeff Schmeier making moves. He goes past Alex Smith, and for the first time, he's starting to make some noise now in 4th place.
Indeed, we've seen Smith get in there and also be one to make some a little bit sketchy moves at times. Thought he was going to get into the side of Jeff Schmeier for a brief moment, but no. He launches up alongside Oscar Fredrickson, takes the bottom line away from the number 12 as we ride on board through NASCAR 3 and 4. And coming off into the tri-oval once again. He's going to move himself into the top 3. But look at what that has done. He's lost a little touch with Pavlovsky and Hendricks. I don't think he'll lose touch with them completely, but it does look like when you get to the later laps, you got to be careful about those moves you're making, because you can maybe lose a little bit of ground on those in front of you.
Yeah, it's really a question game, and that's what we're starting to see here. Who's making the right plays? Who's asking the right questions? And look at how they fan in the back to almost 4 wide as they run on through, back to 1 and 2 wide throughout the majority of it. And then after the move of Smith to 3rd, here comes another little search from Fredrickson, trying to find his way back in and not managing it. So they're now building that gap here, the front 2, and they can't afford to let that one just dangle out too far. They're going to want to try and pull that back in, and look at the way they reel it in across the tri-oval and in towards 1. It's nothing once again after being out to about 6 car lengths.
One thing we have to keep in mind in all of this is there is an incident limit in this race, 26x, and you are immediately disqualified. There's not even a drive-through to predicate that. So you've got to be careful with how hard you're taking hits and how aggressive you are out there. Now, not too many drivers are going to be bumping and banging that much, but remember, some of these cars have had to climb back through the field after an incident or two.
They have done, and so they'll be looking around and saying, well, we're a little bit worse for wear and we don't want to be in disqualification territory. And it kind of throws back to the old school days of sim racing, Joe. You know, you remember the times where it was 17 instant points in an official iRacing race, and that's it, you're disqualified. None of this drive-through penalty business that was into play. And that old school style of racing really did put a lot of emphasis on, right, look after your instant points. They are invaluable.
Trying to race clean, so important. Wow, that was a big run from Smith, but Pavlovsky threw the block on him and kept him back in 3rd for now. Riding on board with Jeff Schmeier, the number 30 car, 5th in line right now. Watches to see what Fredrickson decides to do. Both of them jump into the bottom.
At the bottom and hoping, but everyone is running towards the bottom. Everyone's looking for an angle and just that small way they can make that extra place. I think they're happy to leave Carl Hendricks out there at the front of this field at the moment on lap 144, but they know by the time that they reach 200, this race is going to be very different from where they are now. And again, Smith gets a run, gets a shot into the back of Pavlovsky, who now has to go to the front because it's overtake or be overtaken. He finds the line. Hendricks falls perfectly into just the best gap he could possibly find, and that is a great move, which puts Pavlovsky now to the point.
Behind them, don't forget, you can see that bright blue car. That's Partridge being led by Northway. They're definitely plenty close up to them. Pateklis also has Garen Batten and Edward Shelley. 3 of the Fusion Gold cars are lined up together, and within the top 10, they could be a force.
Well, they've also got the Fusion Silver car of Tom Guest behind them, so they've certainly got a lot of work to bring themselves into play. So they've definitely got a lot. They can definitely make those moves, but speaking of the Fusion Gold car right up at the pointy end, here comes Alex Smith, looking for that move on Kyle Hendricks, and they will go door to door, wing mirror to wing mirror. And just like that, it's going to stay stay parity resumed, so to speak, as they go across the front. But look at that small turn. The low side of the banking paying off then in the short term for Smith. But Hendricks on that outside, now looking to get the run out of 2 that gets him what he wants. And disaster for Michael Hogg, who has a disconnect from what was about 12th or 13th position.
That is absolutely gutting this deep into the race. So he'll have to try and reconnect if he can and see if he can at least wrap it up, but he's not going to be in the hunt for the win after that one. Still running side by side for P2 as they have been for pretty much this entire lap. Hendricks versus Smith, and Fredrickson watching on from behind saying, guys, can one of you make a move here? I'd like to move forwards.
Yeah, it's a case of pick your choice, and for Fredrickson, he has as much responsibility as the car behind to influence as the car in front, because drafting doesn't just affect by being the car that leads and following the car in front of you. It's about how many are there and what's making the streamlined process and the aerodynamics easier, and that was the key there. Moving Fredrickson down low with Vavrovsky gives that bottom line a huge advantage compared to that on the top. Hendricks now in trouble up there in third position, because it might be fourth. The 12 of Fredrickson for Sweden SimRace Esports finds himself with a great opportunity and now looking for that third position as early as possible. But look at the run that Hendricks gets. He gets it back again.
2 wins to his name. Oscar Fredrickson, but also was in contention for the championship last year. Is he going to be able to do that again this year? He's a bit farther down coming into round 2. A good finish will do him well if he brings it home, so he doesn't want to risk things too much. This is his second season of competition, so he's still somewhat of a newcomer, but as we said, both he and the SimRacing Sweden drivers really were massively fast pretty much from the get-go last time in.
Yeah, they are an incredibly quick bunch of drivers. I know them from the likes of Miles Owens, who's been really good in the MX-5 scene out there. So they have a team that is very good. Ewan Bremer, I think, is another one who definitely helps them out. But SimRace Sweden Esports are really strong and always have, I would say, a stoke in the fire, so to speak. But Hendricks stuck on that outside. Smith wanting none of him moving up, and now Fredrickson will take the opportunity to attack and put himself in the right place. If I'm Jeff Schmeier here, who's 5th in the train, save. This is the perfect time to save fuel and gain any little advantage that you can out, because if this goes long, and we're looking now towards lap 150, which is next, so 51 laps to go, this is the perfect time to start thinking about saving more, and they're going to go into the wall together. Round goes Alex Smith, the caution comes out, and there's more tagging.
Oh, Hendricks and another one. He should still have that spare car, which is going to look like it wound up being important. You said that early in this one. Another big one as at least 6 or 7 drivers collected.
That's a massive one. It was an incident in 2 stages. I think it was Patekalis who was the one who got caught out by his own teammate coming across the road. You look around, it's a junkyard out there. Everyone's going, wow, I don't believe that. But these are the fine margins that you get. Everyone's trying to be aggressive. No one wants to give an inch out there. And the big hits are starting to really come in. There's the hit, and very fortunate there was the 15 to not go and loop over, and the 666 as well. I think they all got very fortunate there that they weren't high-siding.
Yeah, you can see a little bit of raise from the 15. I actually think, even though he was at the start of it, he seems to have gotten the least out of it, because he just kind of brushed the wall and then nobody else contacted him after that. There's Kyle Hendricks looking very much worse for wear and probably thinking, don't make me do this all over again. I am almost certain he's going to take that spare car and pop back out.
Well, he has to. He's got the black and orange mechanical flag, the same way that Eric Smith, Aldis Putekelis, Troy Anderson, and Edward Shelley all have. 5 drivers that have to use the fast repair in this instant, or they're on the lane for an incredibly long amount of time.
Yeah, there he goes down to his pit stall, but just about everybody actually is coming in for that one. So another case of trying to pit whenever they can. It's still not enough to get to the finish. It's at lap 150. It's going to take massive saving. So, I mean, somebody could, but again, we've had so many more cautions. I think our first 3 were between laps 1 and 80, and since then we've had another 5.
I think this is where you're going to start finding yourself in the caution era. If you are looking at this and thinking about track position, now's the time that you're playing stick or twist. It's going to be a game of, if another caution comes out, Do you want to stay out with the track position, or do you want to come in for fresh tyres? We'll take a look from Edward Shelley's perspective here. So look, sees the smoke in front. Where do I go? Goes to the left. Perfect call. Hendricks comes across. Pateklis takes a massive hit there on the right-hand side. Shelley's trying to avoid it. Pateklis hits the barriers, back up on top. There's the hit that brings Edward Shelley damage to the front right, and as such, needing repairs.
He was so close to getting away with it, but Pateklis just bouncing back off the wall kind of did him in on that one. Hendricks back out on that spare car and running running in third of all places. I mean, it's almost like that didn't happen. He's just out where he was before.
He got lucky. Remember, he had to get back up to speed in order to regain his position, which he had when the caution came out. Just because he was involved with it doesn't mean he doesn't get to take his place. And then the fast repair comes into play. It's just a normal pit stop at the end of it. That is a huge lifeline and completely changes the context of this race. It brings him back into position. But speaking of drivers who are brought back into position, all of that has moved Jesper Eriksson from 22nd at the start of that last stint now to 8th.
Wow. Sometimes the racing gods just smile upon you. By the way, and not really that great of a surprise, but that caution is under review, and they're looking at cars 15 and 385. So there you go. Either one of them could be in serious trouble. Hendricks especially does not want a black flag. He's already had one, and that's what honestly put him on the back foot.
Yeah, it really did. He dropped an entire lap and it took forever. So this is Hendricks' perspective of it. So he's up on that high side, I can't put blame on Hendricks there for that incident.
Yeah.
He had nowhere to go and he was being shuffled out. The only thing you could say was, did he need to back off of it ever so slightly to avoid that happening? I would put that all on Alex Smith, just trying to be too aggressive out there and using all the road.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where if he wasn't trying to be aggressive, yeah, maybe he could have pulled out of it. But I think he was completely within his right. Like you said, the car was there. The spotter had to have been saying right side for the 15, and he just didn't give enough room coming off the turn, and that's what made it all unfold. So risk versus reward, and it seems to have not worked out for some, but has for others.
It certainly have, and you're now starting to see it, especially on Carl Hendricks' car and actually the car behind of Robert Northway. Look at all of the cars that have any form of white on them. Look at how much rubber and dirt is now starting to build up on them as they've gone around the circuit. This has been a tough day at the office, and they're looking around at this restart for Vroski, Fredriksson, and Jeff Schmeier, your top three, with Hendricks effectively there as well, who will be classified as third, so Schmeier in fourth. It's been a tough race, and this is probably the crucible of what they're looking at. Welcome to the end game.
Yep, we are now officially into the final quarter of this 500-mile event. Hold on to your hats. You're now going to see things ramp up from here as drivers are looking towards who can be the first to the finish, not just survival mode from this stage on. Vroski has control, and the green flag is out. Fredriksson is going to be on that front row, but does not go quickly. Hendricks actually gets a pretty good shot and is going to follow the 10 forward.
Yeah, and that's a great launch, and I think Hendricks was quite switched onto it, and Fredriksson maybe wasn't, so has to fall back into line. Schmeier keeps his fourth place, Garen Batten in fifth, and pretty much side by side is Partridge versus Tom Guest, so they're going to have to try and work it out now as they head on to the back stretch. Some drivers moving back onto the lead lap include Wayne Hutchinson, who's now moved himself up into 11th place, so there are some brilliant renaissances in this race heading into the final stages.
Yeah, we are getting that too wide briefly once again. Ray Partridge, part of that up on the high side. Jeff Schmeier as well. Once again, those Fusion Gold cars kind of split up, especially now that they've lost a few of them with that massive wreck that brought out our most recent caution. As we weave our way down into turn one, once again, Schmeier trying to run that slingshot line around the outside.
Yeah, and it's really difficult out there, and we're just getting confirmation that car number 15, Alex Smith, is going to get a drive-through penalty for avoidable contact.
Really?
So he's down in 14th, and he's now going to be right back there. So he's been adjudged as the catalyst to what happened for the big one.
Okay, I'd confused myself. I was thinking of the 385 there. So, yeah, that does make more sense. I thought they were penalizing Hendricks for a brief moment. Yeah, that's kind of what you and I were expecting there for the 15 car being sent in to take care of that one, which is not what you want this late in the race. It's going to be all the harder to try and recover with so few laps left.
Yeah, and it's all about keeping yourself out of trouble, and the moment you get into trouble, you need it early, not late, and that's what you're trying to bank on. Get into trouble early and not late. For Vrosky, a driver who has stayed out of trouble by being in A or A1 position. Jesper Eriksson, who was 13th on the restart, now up to 9th, eyeing up Tom Guest, this for 8th.
Jesper with an impressive recovery here. Just got caught out and didn't even get the caution in all of this, but somehow finds his way back into it. Chasing behind Tom Guest currently as they weave their way through turns 1 and 2 along this steep 31-degree banking before it empties onto the back stretch. The Fusion Silver car trying to see if he can find an opening. He doesn't, so Jesper says, I will, as he's going to have to thread the needle for the lapped car.
Yeah, that was Pateklis down on the bottom. They had to thread in. Alex Smith will now take his pit stop, but that was a big, brave move on Tom Guest by Jesper Eriksson, and that's the risk you have to take to move up in this field, and he does so. There goes Smith down into the pits, but Jesper Eriksson's making moves, and he's doing it at the right time.
That'll bump him up to 8th now, with Smith taking his penalty. We see in the upper right hand of your screen, he wraps that one up. Should just be a simple in and out. Not completely clear there for Jesper, though, as Tom Guest fighting him for it on the bottom side.
Yeah, really wants him to try and just say, give up. I don't want you to work that high line. And when you're up against a lot of the Fusion cars, gold and silver, it doesn't matter the colour. You're trying to find each and every way through that you can. It's Edward Shelley that he's trying to get by next and moving low. Big block thrown, saying, no, I'm not going to let you do that because I've got Garen Batten to try and defend. But there goes Shelley up into the wall, not remembering that you got to turn in the tri-oval. He loses out. Contact behind Partridge, hard into the wall.
Oh, thought he would save it for a brief moment, but just turned a little bit too far sideways. He was not happy. He was immediately on the radio, upset with the other car. No caution as he trickles down our tower.
Well, it stays green, and for Ray Partridge, that's his race pretty much done. You'd feel after that. A huge hit as he tried to get through. He looked there down to the inside. 666 getting into him there. That is Pateklis, who just gives him the tip and just sends him at the wrong time. The Dog Bear blue car has been looking around, hoping for a first win in 6 years, and ultimately it goes up in smoke.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's maybe a penalty coming for that 666, who's already 2 laps down after being involved in that heavy accident. So we'll see if the stewards wind up taking a look at that. I do know the driver's already on the radio trying to ask them to send their eyes to that incident. Meanwhile, looking back at the front for Vrosky, Hendricks, Fredriksson, Schmeier, and now Eriksson in the top 5.
Jesper Eriksson is driving like a driver possessed at this moment. He has simply been on a one-track mind as they now tick over with 41 laps to go. And now here comes the search down to the bottom. Does he link up? Jeff Schmeier stays up high and doesn't really have much drive from the exit of 2. That brings Eriksson to 4th, and the Eriksson-Fredriksson Express has now recoupled and will now leave the station shortly.
Got one car with a big run there on the bottom side. That's Pateklis, actually, trying to get in, get at least one of his laps back. So we come around to complete lap 160 now. Drivers could pit in and make it to the finish easily from here. This is the safe zone of that pit window. But with how hot the racing is and the risk of a yellow, I don't think we're going to see anybody in yet.
No, not yet. And the reason why there wasn't a yellow flag out there for the Partridge incident was because he never broke the plane of 90 degrees. You've got to have at least 90 degrees and cars around you to have a caution get thrown out. Automatic cautions here being put into play. Just because he's slow on the top doesn't mean that a caution will come out. So that was a really big case of he saved the car, but no caution comes of it. But still, for Wawrowski at the front, he's being dangled out like Carl Hendricks was in the early stints. This is a tough place for Trevor to be in because he knows he's burning up more than everyone else.
Yeah, he's sucking up that fuel, and he's last taken a stop about 11 laps ago, so it's a little bit too far for him to try and do it from the front of this pack. And you can see the car they're coming upon. Well, that is the 8. I think he's taken his spare car, Ray Partridge, and gotten back out, but he's all on his lonesome, so he's going to go another lap down.
Yeah, he'll go to 2 laps down now, and with Jay Bonds as the lucky dog at the moment, this is not what you asked for. That in the wall is Tom Guest off of the exit of the corner, who is now in 11th position, and back there with David H. Baker, who is there in 10th, who's just quietly brought himself into play. But Patekalis now is losing ground, and in fact will lose the place to Garen Batten, and now this is allowing the next train to start to form. So they've left the station. It's 6 at the front who are fighting for the race win as it currently stands.
Yeah, we'll just had almost a carbon copy of what we saw in that replay. He smacked the wall out of 4, and that's why he was slow out of there. It's kind of a moot point for him. Is, like I said, he's 2 laps down, so he's not really fighting for much at this stage. If anything, probably just wants to stay out to be a wingman for the various Fusion drivers that are still in the hunt for this one.
Well, it's been a long race. Oh, in the wall goes Fredrickson now. He takes a tap into the wall. He's got to be careful about that. They've been driving for 2.5 hours in this race, and tiredness will now be a factor.
No doubt. You can't imagine the concentration that's required in these cars to try and keep them not only pointed the right way, but out of your competitors. We've seen how easy it is to make just an ill-fated move in a heartbeat out here. Fredrickson will get away with it. Ericsson will hook up with him once again as they try to push to catch up Hendricks and Wawrowski.
Well, this is where the big push comes into play, and they are now trying to break that group apart, and they are managing that and doing everything that they want to and then some. So I think they're managing something that works right now, but it's about not just right now, it's about later on as well. Have you got enough to get what you need later on? I tell you what, Ray Partridge is doing a big favour there to Trevor Wawrowski as he closed up, but as he moved over to the high side, I think Trevor here doesn't want to pass him because this will give him a chance to save a little bit of fuel. You can see he immediately moves back into line, doesn't want anything of getting through Ray Partridge. He would love it if he stays there, but now he has to make the move because Ray is going to let him go up on the top side.
Yeah, he's just trying to stay out of this fight. They've got the 96 of Moldovan actually coming through. He's 62 laps down. You said it was 75% as Bogdan hits the outside wall and thankfully does not cause an accident. But was that the official word, 75% to get points?
That's only what I can assume at the moment. I haven't had a chance to actually read the specifics on the raw. I don't know whether it's 75%. I know Formula 1 is 90% of the official race distance. It might even just be 50% that you're trying to need in order to score points. It does vary from series to series, so that's going to be worth keeping in mind as they go out there. And Hendricks having to move the line a little bit there because, you know, where do you want to be if you're Ray Partridge? Ideally, you want to be in P2 because you're going to take advantage of everyone else who needs lapping. Alex Smith is going to be the next car that they're going to be jumping up across, taking a look from Robert Northway's perspective on the back of this train, realising that 6th is great right now, but if I can play a strategy card that gets me to the race lead, this is a gamble of, do I make my pit under green flag or do I hold out as long as possible to get a freebie when the caution comes?
I still think we will see drivers wait for that caution, try to hold out. There's too many laps to the end for it to go completely green, though it's not unheard of. It seems unlikely based on the trends as the blue and gold cars now duck to the bottom briefly to go around the lapped car of Partridge and put him just another couple positions down in the train. The other thing about this Northway we were watching from onboard him, I can't recall any moment where we've seen Robert Northway really make those aggressive moves like many of the other drivers have. He seems to be very very content to ride. And that, again, is why I think he's probably one that's got something up his sleeve for late in this game.
Well, he's just been on the radio and giving a little bit of a stick over to Bogdan Moldovan, saying, you are 62 laps down. What on earth are you doing trying to get involved with us leaders? And he's got a fair point to it, in the sense that he's looking around at everything that's going on. I'm trying to bank my race. I've got 2 lap cars in front of me and that front group that's there. What are you doing trying to gain your lap back? And, you know, he's trying to win this race, and he wants as little variable as possible to give him what he wants. Now, that's a car off the road in the pits that finds itself in trouble. That's Andrew Schism, who was trying to make the pits, and he's just spun it coming into the lane.
It's a bit of a shame. Yeah, Bogdan is the reason he's much faster is because he has stopped in about 4 or 5 laps ago. So he's got very fresh tires. So he has speed in comparison, but he seems unable to do much more than just kind of get involved in this. And like you said, become an annoyance for a few of the drivers. Here is Andrew's problem, getting it woed up. And not the first time we've seen a driver just a little too hard on the brakes down to the cones.
Yeah, it is very difficult here. You got brakes, effectively the equivalent of Swiss cheese that you're working with here. So you're trying to hope that you find a good day with them, and sometimes you don't. That's just the way it goes. But with Wawrowski's lead at the moment over Hendricks, you're now starting to think about what does this group look like as it goes through. Garen Batten is desperately trying to stay on this. He's at 0.8 of a second from Robert Northway. He's desperate, and he's got David H. Baker 0.7 off of that. Edward Shelley's lost a second, has dropped. So there's not much that they can do here at the moment except just hope that they can cling on, and they've got an opportunity. In fact, these would be the drivers I'd look at, Batten and Baker and Shelley, to maybe try and undercut and try and win this race on 2.
Bit of a sigh of relief for the 666 car as Pateklis has been told no further action for his incident with the 8 of Partridge a little bit earlier. Bad news for Partridge, though, who still runs in this front group, but is now 2 laps down from the lead. Disappointing to be seeing the battle here at the front, knowing he has the speed for it, but can do nothing about it.
Another lap car joins the mix in Sebastian Jackson, who is 20th position overall and now drops the lap. So that's another one to add to the train, which only makes it quicker, which only makes it more difficult for Garen Batten to try and deal with. And he needs to really take some slipstream and go if he wants to join this group. But at the moment, for Wawrowski, it's all calm here on the front here of Daytona Beach, Florida. It's just a case of waiting right now, knowing that they've still got to tick those laps down and find where they want to be. For Wawrowski in the worst position out of everyone in this train, everyone else might just have a bit of an advantage when it comes to the splash and dash.
Still running about a second and some change slower than their quickest laps in this race, so they're not hustling at this stage, although they're about halfway into this stint. And we are to, 30 laps to go, about 29 laps to go, it looks like, at this stage. So now it's really getting into it. We said things would start to crank up. We said drivers will want to try and be at the front because there is no green-white checkers. Well, expect those that have the pace and that are trying to hold on to this group to start to make some moves.
Well, it's patience game at the moment at 28 laps to go. You're looking at Oscar Fredriksson. He'll have the license to attack. Jesper Eriksson will be playing gunner to anyone who challenges behind, be it Jeff Schmeier, who started 25th today, be it Robert Northway, who started on the front with Kyle Hendricks. Fredriksson started 9th. Wawrowski, who leads, started in 20th, outside row 10. Not often that you see outside row 10 doing the job here at Daytona, but it goes to show you qualifying is one thing, race pace is where you win this one.
It's the top 8 right now that are still kind of in it, although I'd say it's more like top 6 because Garen Batten and David Baker look like they're dropping that group at the front, so they may be losing touch. They also kind of need a caution to bring them back into it. We watch Fredriksson here, not third in line, but third on the track as they catch up to the lapped car of Alex Smith there, who had his penalty served already.
And Smith's definitely not going to want to let go from this group because he'll be right there with Ray Partridge and co, and he doesn't want to lose time to Seb Jackson, who's now fallen way off of this group. So there's an eye on it, and he very nearly tagged Ericsson as he went through. So that's going to be a little bit of a cause for concern. We're seeing a couple stragglers into the pits. So Troy Anderson will make his last stop of the day. So we're seeing a couple drivers here just picking themselves off the lane, but no one really from the front yet. And that's where we're going to start seeing the longer this goes, the more likely they're going to get itchy about when do we dive.
Yeah, looking through 8 laps down for Troy, so he's definitely not in it. Everybody on the lead lap is the top 18 right now, and they're all on the same strategy, all pitted about 24 laps ago. So not any variance coming in that we have to keep track of, but who is going to try and do something different to all their rivals here at the end of this race?
Well, I'd say the driver who's maybe on the back foot might be Jesper Eriksson, and that might be why he's allowed Oscar Fredriksson to go out there and attack, because he has had to go around a little bit longer. He has had to be the one who's sticking in, being a little bit more patient, recovering through the field. Hendricks has had time now on the front of this field. He's part of this front group now. Ericsson is there and hoping to find a way through. Jeff Schmeier, remember, has been the best on the fuel game all day. He could extend it longer than anybody else. Northway is sitting down trying to win this one on strategy, and Northway not getting much love because Alex Smith's diving back through on him right now as the lucky dog as it currently stands. So it's a case of pick and choose. Where do you want to be? A little half look there to the inside from Oscar Fredriksson, and again it's another lap which they're just going to tick off with 25 to go.
The news starts to tighten. If you're not in this front group, you need some sort of caution. Technically, everybody on the lead lap still theoretically has a shot to try and get this to the finish first, but will they get that gamble that helps them out in the end? Otherwise, I'd say watch these top 6 that we've been following with the final 25 laps of this race. Vavrovsky continues to lead over Kyle Hendricks. Kyle really has dealt with adversity in this race, not only having to charge back through, having to deal with a penalty, but had to take his spare car and still somehow is in with a great shot.
Jesper Eriksson has played the same game, and he's got similar results as well in 4th position. You talk about 4 drivers who have basically avoided trouble like the plague, and then you've got 2 drivers like Hendricks and Eriksson who have had to battle through hellfire and brimstone to get to where they've needed to be in this race, and know that this is where they are hitting the money laps. Now they're trying to think about, where do I win this race? And Fredriksson getting really close there through the middle of 3, knowing that he's got to go out there, be aggressive, try and force the hand of those 2 cars in front, and maybe, just maybe, might get the result that they need. It's again another bit of calm. It's these front 4, and really it's Ray Partridge who plays a huge factor in this one for those in 5th and 6th, because those lap cars, at some point Jeff Schmeier's got to get by and got to get moving.
Amazingly, 29 cars still racing here with so few laps left. Cameron Brown, Gary Thomas, Stephen Verline are only 3 DNFs in this event so far. Everybody else has brought it back on the track, trying to collect what points they can. Hendricks with a small run coming through 3 and 4. Question is, what does he want to do with it? Will he try and get in front of Vavrovsky, or is he happy and content to continue to just ride, save a bit of fuel to maybe see if he can get to the end? Because they are about 10 laps away from where we should start to see drivers come in, as Hakan Schutz will be in for his pit stall.
Yeah, Hawkins shot in for his stop, and that is a confirmed stop that he needs to get to the end of this race. So he's decided at 21 to go, that's all that he can stomach, and now we'll look to try and get that back. Nose to tail, Hendricks not necessarily saving as he sits behind there, just happy to push and get right up to the bumper. You'd leave a tiny bit of a gap, you'd lift off, and he's out of the corner. Oh, what a save by Hendricks!
Holy cow, how in the world was that not an accident? I thought maybe he was trying to come into pit lane and just botched it or something, but I think that was a genuine out-of-control moment when the car just started to break loose. And another thing that we do need to consider is how the cars are handling late in the stint. Some of them might be a little easier to drive than others.
Oh, they will be later on. Take another look at this. Kyle Hendricks, what happened here? Did he just grab the... Oh, he just grabbed the apron going through there, and he just had to get the slide, and even Race Control was impressed with that sort of save there from the 385. What a save. It drops them back, but now it puts the machine in progress. SimRace Sweden Esports 2 and 3. Trevor Favrovsky, watch out.
Fredrickson, the leader of the pair right now, but running in second place, shows himself up to the high side, doesn't have the speed. Favrovsky will hold on to it. Less than 20 laps to go now at this stage. These drivers looking at so few miles to bring it home. Wayne Hutchison coming in from the lead lap. We're starting to see the dominoes fall.
And remember, those who decide they want to take tyres are going to get a huge advantage. It depends on how late they go. You feel that if you're down to about 10 laps to go, is it even worth taking tyres at that point? Do you just fill it up with a gallon of fuel and say off you pop and go again? That's going to be what they're starting to debate. Is this going to be a case? I don't think it's 4 tyres if you stay green. It might be 2. And now here comes some moves there. Smith now tries to bring himself through. And that's another car in between him and Jeff Schmeier. And you've got to remember as well, Alex Smith, who of course had the penalty with guess who? Carl Hendricks right in front of him.
Let's not forget that it's a small splash and dash. Can you even get 2 tires, or do you just send them back out there? Because theoretically, if you're splitting it up, it's about 5 or 6 seconds that you're going to be stationary, and then out you go to try and wrap this one up. That's assuming it stays green as out into the wall. We get the lapped car once again struggling with Smith trying to stay in this in case he can get that lucky dog. He does not want to give up this group.
No, he really doesn't want to give it up. Furkolb now dives into the pits from the lead lap. This is becoming an all-important race. Garen Batten gone off the back of this group now. It's still 6 at the front. Fredrickson sitting and waiting and sitting and waiting. If there's any indication of who goes first, it's the car at the front, car number 10, who will be the first to make a splash and dash. Stuck out there at the front, hung out to dry, some would say, at the front, being the essentially a ruler for everybody else out there in this field. Partridge starts to slide wide. Now Hendricks will get the chance to join back with the main group to make it 4 at the front again.
Trying to desperately get up with them and not lose out. Kyle Hendricks started this from the top spot. He intends to try and finish it there. Trevor Favrovsky in the lead, but not by much, as Fredrickson and Eriksson continue to wait patiently behind him, looking to see how they want to play their cards in this game of poker all the way to the finish. Who will come away with a flush on this one?
Well, at the moment, they've gone and done everything that they've needed to. They've been out there on the flop, saying, what can we do? On the turn, they've just gone through. Now they find themselves at the river, and soon it will be showdown value time. In comes Hogg in to make his stop. But still, these drivers continue. 15 laps to go now in this race. And Favrovsky holding steady at the front of this field, knowing that this is a waiting game, and each and every lap are torture hours.
Who is going to be the first to blink in the top group of 6 that is still holding on to this one? Schmeier, Northway, Hendricks, Eriksson, Fredrickson, and Favrovsky. None of them have taken their final stop. Garen Batten has, though, but he might be a little bit too far back to undercut them. It was all of, I think, 6 or 7 seconds that he was behind that top group.
Well, all of 6 and 7, and look at this, lap traffic. This is going to get dicey as they go through. That's Andrew Schism they've got to get by. J-Bonds as well, they've got to try and navigate their way through. So this is getting a little bit too close for comfort for this entire group that sits. 6, still happy to sit there. Has Northway saved enough fuel? Has Jeff Schmeier been able to save enough fuel? Is this going to be a case of who's got what left in the tank?
Saw Moldovan stay off to the high side this time, letting them go by. By the way, for fans of Bogdan, he's up to 31st. He has taken over Stephen Vervian, so he won't finish last on this race, and will at least get 1 position for his efforts. I think he might have 1 more in Gary Thomas if he stays out there beyond this, but that'll be as high as he goes. Now on to lap 188 of this race, down to 13 to go. Favrovsky continues to lead. He's on lap 37 of this stint. There's only a few more, theoretically, that he can go before he has to pit.
Well, he's trying to bring people in with. That's going to be the thing. As long as he can go, as long as he's got someone to go in with, he's got a chance of this one. And there's a little pivot over to the right side, to the left side, sorry. And that was a thought from Fredriksson with the help of Ericsson to try and get this move. And ultimately, the SimRace Sweden Express was there. We'll take a look at what happened top right for Daniel Thomas, who took a wiggle through the middle of the corner. And it shows you just how finite the margins are.
We got some takers, including R2 from the Swedish sim racing team. So it looks like Ericsson and Fredriksson pitting in, and that was also, who was that third? Jeff Schmeier. Looks like he will join them.
Well, now becomes a big game. Oh, Ericsson getting it all locked up and wrong, but gets it in his box. He almost tagged the wall as he looked to try and get in, and he will take tyres. He's taking 2.
Interesting. So let's see if they take any more. Nope. It is going to be a quick one for Fredriksson. 17 seconds. Ericsson, both of them, 2 tires and back out. That was tight on getting it in. He really was pushing the limit. There you can see them exiting pit lane now. Vavrovsky actually about to put them a lap down.
Yes, but he's also about to come in this lap. He was talking with Hendricks, saying, I'm not going to come in this lap, I'm going to come in next lap. So that's going to be important. Schmeier, a very long stop, has lost a lot of time out there compared to his main rivals and challengers. Ericsson now going to get put the lap down. A caution here would be a travesty for them, but this is the time where it is so chaotic. Now they run through 3 and 4. We expect to come in the likes there of Trevor Vavrovsky. Will he have Hendricks, and will he have Northway in company?
As they look in, yes, all 3 of them will be pitting in. This will hand over the lead to David Baker if he decides to carry on, but he does not. He is going to pit in. So looks like we'll have to look farther back to figure out who will inherit the lead from that one. Schmeier, by the way, the longer stop is due to him taking 4 tires, interestingly.
Wow, that's a big call to go on to 4. Oh, that's a horrible box by Kyle Hendricks, and that might cost him the race.
Oh, if he manages to stay with him, he's going to take 2 tires. And that was who was that?
Northway took none. Northway just took fuel.
I wondered if anybody was going to take a gamble on that. His car is going to be slower, but he has got such a gap on track position. Problem is, if we get a caution from here before 4 laps to go, he is going to be ultra vulnerable compared to all others around him.
Absolutely, and this is the big gamble, the final roll of the dice. Pateklis coming through. Where is the question of Ericsson and Fredriksson? They've linked up together. They're nowhere by comparison. Up to speed is Robert Northway, and Ericsson now looks around and will find that, look at who's there. Kyle Hendricks, that's all he's going to start catching. 43.5 once back up to speed. They're going to zoom on by him, but they're not going to reach Trevor, and they're not going to reach Robert. Now this is a straight-up duel. Scrivener now down into the pit, and so now it does give the lead back then to one Mr. Robert Northway. First time he's led all day.
Poor Scrivener took a speeding penalty on entry, so that'll hurt him here at the very end. 1.2 seconds back to Trevor Vavrovsky, who did take 2 tires. I think Northway is vulnerable here. With 1 second between them and 9 laps to go, I just don't think he can make it to the end, staying ahead of him.
0.8 of a second. Trevor Vavrovsky is now hunting. It's 0.9 of a second for Jesper Ericsson, who's desperate, and they've got 3 in the tandem because Fredriksson's there and Kyle Hendricks is there. So can the 3 chase these 2? Traffic out of the way, 8 laps to go when they come to the line. Now this becomes a really important game of who's working together with who, and Hendricks going down low. They're trying to get past Fredriksson, trying to disrupt. He takes the fastest lap.
Robert Northway already caught up in front of them. You can see them there in the distance. Vavrovsky taking the lead with ease as he ducks down to the inside. And that means that, behind them, my goodness, some crazy racing between Ericsson and Hendricks as they dip and dive to try and block one another.
but they're there, and that's crucial. They've got there to the back of this group. Vavrovsky leads, but look at the hot hand who have caught up. So now, after all of that, it's still together. 96 in the infield, tyre there in the outfield there. They just run through. That would have been Moldovan again, who found himself in trouble. Blocks high, blocks low, high side goes Jesper Eriksson, looking for second and soon to the lead.
Gets around Robert Northway. The gamble on no tires is not paying off for that 46 car as he continues to trundle backwards, the opposite of where he's wanting to go at this stage. There's Bogdan's incident. Thankfully, looks like it did not bring out the caution despite the massive hit. And yeah, it looks like nobody else was around because it probably would have normally brought out a caution in this situation. Vavrovsky leads with 6 laps to go as they cross the line.
Well, now this becomes a crucial place because they're looking around at 4 laps to go. If a yellow flag comes out, that's the race sorted. So track position becomes vital. Here comes Hendricks up on the high side trying to make a move. Any caution now, and we've got a chance to run 1, maybe 2 laps worth of racing. A caution after this is going to be deadly. If there's any incident on the last lap, they're going to race it out.
With Schmeier taking his 4, it's now down to 5 with a realistic chance at the win. Unless all 5 of them wad it up, Jeff is effectively out of this one. Vavrovsky will lead them by once again, going by more of the lapped cars. How much of a factor will that play into it? Kyle Hendricks holding tight to the back of him, but Eriksson looking like he's struggling a bit now.
Well, Eriksson's used up the best of his 2 tyres out there. He'll know that he's just got to try and hold with them because he'll have 2 tyres that are no good on the left and 2 tyres that are starting to fade with that good rubber that he's got on the right-hand side. So he's using all of that and he's playing the best of both worlds. That's what you call a hedge of bets, and it's the best kind, but Hendricks is there and pushing with Trevor Vavrovsky. Wants to try and find himself every opportunity, but Trevor here, and they are engaging in conversation, these two. It's us two fighting out for it at the moment. Eriksson finding himself there in third. Northway has really plateaued. I wonder if they've just used the best of the tyres.
10 miles remain in this race, and Trevor Vavrovsky looking strong, but Hendricks is still hunting him. Northway, I can't believe he's still there in 4th on his no-tire call, but I think the slipstream is flattering him somewhat as Oscar Fredriksson is still behind him. Not sure what's going on if he's also struggling on those 2-tire calls. Meanwhile, as we come down the back straightaway, when will Hendricks make his move? What is he planning?
Well, he's got to go, and I would suggest he's trying to go for the last lap, but he leaves his fate in the lap of the gods if he should do so. There's a lot of space out there on the circuit, a couple battles out there like Ed Shelley against Thomas against Hutchinson that might cause a few bits of concern out there, but at the moment with 3 laps to go, Trevor Vavrovsky, who has led pretty much the entire way through for the final 50 laps of this race, Joe, is in position to win this one, but he's got to hold off Hendricks, and here's Eriksson just trying to stay out of range to now make this launch with 3, then 2, then 1 lap to go. Eriksson might just be biding his time.
Played a dangerous game, though, because remember, if we get that caution on any lap besides the last one, that is it, and whoever is in the lead will be your winner. In fact, this next lap is going to be the last one where we can have it. Into the wall goes Robert Northway, finding those old tires just a little bit too much. Popsicle sticks in the air.
Just 2 laps to go, and you start looking at Kyle Hendricks, and it's just been the quiet game. And I think this is all he needs to do. Wait, because he's not going to make it now. He's going to make it on the last lap, Joe.
Seems like that's the way he wants to do it. All he needs is half a lap more, and he won't be vulnerable to that caution flag coming out. He's pulling up behind him. He's testing the run that he can get, but he lifts before he gets into the final corner. Jesper Eriksson now also getting ever closer, showing that he did have speed, but was biding his time. White flag awaits them at the top here, Jake.
He certainly does, and now it's about where, not how you make the move, but where you make the move. Is there going to be any search into one? Hendricks now looking around, searching on the back bumper, not necessarily finding something. Eriksson now starting to look up on the high side. He's trying to get any sort of run he possibly can. This back stretch is going to be the most vital run ever. Vavrovsky, it will hold the weight of the world behind him. Here it comes.
Goes down to the inside to try to cover him off. Hendricks uses his speed this time. Ericsson going to follow him through. Ericsson runs out of straightaway, and actually I think he brushed the wall round the outside as Hendricks is going to try to steal this away from Vrosky. Starting this one on the pole. He's so close, but he slides off the corner. He still gets the shot. They're neck and neck. They're going to bang wheels as they come across the line. Who is it going to be as they cross? Vrosky, by less than 1,000th of a second, will beat Hendricks to this one. Unbelievable finish.
A dead heat as far as you can see it. That was just simply legendary driving by Trevor Vrosky. He had to dig deep at the front of this field to pick that win up, and that you could not do any better if you're car 10.
Kyle has got to be thinking, if I hadn't have spun my wheels just that little bit out of turn 4, that would have made the difference. He could have been our winner. How about Trevor Vrosky starting this from 20th place out there, found his way to the front, and has basically been a dominant force since then. He has led so many laps of this. He put himself at the right place at the right time, called it right on the pit stops. Kyle gonna have to come home with a P2.
Just absolutely fantastic. But Kyle Hendricks and Jesper Eriksson, give them some credit for the way that they've driven. They've had to come right down from the back of the field to bring themselves right up to the top. Simply put, magnificent from the way they've recovered. And remember, yes, you can have a victory here as we watch a little bit of burnout time on those Eagle Goodyears, which are in full display or coming into play in a moment. But the key here is it's a long championship, and just winning here doesn't guarantee you everything that you want to. But for Vrosky, what a drive.
But the momentum is coming good. Not only his third ever win, but his second this season. He managed to take a class win last time out in the multi-class race for round 1. So nicely done for Trevor Vrosky. He starts things off on the right foot, and he gets to celebrate out in the infield here what has been a well-earned win at Daytona. So that's going to wrap up this race. Let's take a look at the unofficial results. Trevor Vrosky, your winner by 0.000 of a second. It says it's marked as 01 here on our timing and scoring, but iRacing officially is telling us it was even less than that. Kyle Hendricks P2, as Jesper Eriksson will be P3. Robert Northway, still it was a good gamble. He did get home in 4th as Fredrickson was P5, and Jeff Schmeier finishing in 6th. Garen Batten P7, David Baker 8th, and Tom Guest 9th, with Wayne Hutchison rounding out your top 10. Jake?
Yeah, and over the pace to 11th, where Edward Shelley would find himself ahead of Daniel Thomas, Daniel Holmer, and Joshua Hampton, who had a really quiet day today, would find himself as the final car, on the leading lap. 1 lap down would be Alex Smith, who found himself involved here, there, and everywhere with Jerry Fulkolb there in 16th position, up a gain of 15. There would then be Hawkins Schott in 17th and Adam Preston in 18th position. Brian Scrivener would be the last car 1 lap down. Ray Partridge leading those 2 laps down.
Jay Bonds 21st today with Sebastian Jackson in 22nd. Scott Kukas 4 laps down in 23rd. Teklis, unfortunately, only able to get 24th today after he was looking quick for much of it. Michael Hogg 25th. Then you get to the drivers with massive problems. Schism 26th, 12 laps down. Anderson 27th, and Eric Smith in 28th. Moldovan did wind up in 29th in the end, overtaking our 3 DNFs, Brown, Thomas, and Vervayan. As it looks like we've got Trevor Vrosky ready to talk to us here in Victory Lane. Trevor, congratulations, your 3rd ever win in the majors, and 2 of them have come back-to-back. This is quite the start to the season.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. I mean, back-to-back, 100 start, 0.000 margin of victory. I'm just watching it back right now, and wow, it's going to take me a minute to stop shaking. That was intense.
I'm sure the adrenaline is absolutely pumping. So tell us about that last lap. You come in leader. Did you feel confident that you could come out the leader at the end of the lap?
I knew that if I was going to, I had a feeling that if I was going to win, I needed to be leading on that last lap, at least if it was Kyle. I think Kyle did have a stronger car. But, if you can defend the bottom, there's, it's, especially as the run goes on, you can kind of run the guy out of the road, or the cars are getting tight. So if I could start the lead lap in the lead and defend the bottom, then I knew I had a shot. But, man.
Were there any concerns about the late yellow? Because, we kept saying there's no green, white checkers in the way they're running the race today. And drivers behind you were taking that gamble of staying behind you. But we kept wondering who was going to try and move early.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I was trying to, that kind of came into play all the way up to the deciding when that last pit stop would come, because I was debating whether or not to take right sides or not. I ended up going for right sides, but I had the thought also of maybe coming in early to try and utilize those tires a little bit more, but decided to run it out of fuel. And for the last 5 laps of the race, I was praying for a caution. That's all I wanted was caution. But it didn't happen. But was able to, I guess, tie/win here. So I'm not disappointed we didn't get one now.
Well, no tie on this one. Officially, you are the winner according to iRacing. Anybody you want to thank for this victory?
Yeah, shout out to Composite coming in here, getting second win since I've joined them and whatnot. And it's awesome. Shout out to Kyle for just the racing that we had and the work that we did trying to push the pace throughout the race. I'm not teammates with him or anything, but it was a really, really fun time racing with him. And then, all the sponsors, P1 Docs, Grid, SimLab, helping us out. So, yeah, thank you. Thanks to you guys for the broadcast. It's always great. I can't wait to watch this one back.
It'll be a thriller. That was Trevor Vavroski, your winner here today in the number 10. Coming home in third, Jake has caught up with Jesper Eriksson, who is just shy.
Yeah, I have, yes, but a very tough day up and down the order. You found yourself at the front for the majority of the opening half of the race, but obviously you got caught up in an instant, put yourself up on the top side of the wall with about 60, 70 laps to go. Just talk us through your race and just the range of emotions that you must have had going from the start into the middle into the end.
First of all, my mic is probably fucked, so apologies for that, but the race was good. I'm quite happy with the results. P3, the best I thought I could do. It was Kyle and Trevor, that was the 2 top guys, so don't know much that I could do against them, but my little incident in the middle of the race kind of screwed me out for a bit, but it was good. I'm happy, actually. Very happy.
Well, I will apologise for any language that you just heard there, ladies and gentlemen, but yes, but we're sitting down and looking at the way that your teams work. You and Oscar are out there and really trying to throw, yourself right up there at the front, working together as a team. Just how important was it to have your teammate there on some of the restarts there? Because it looked like that you were coordinating fantastically.
To have Oscar on each restart is so important, and just have him throughout the race is super important. Team for us is a big priority, and our teamwork is probably as best as it can be. And to be honest, he called the strategy, or we both did. We kind of just planned it the last 20 laps, and I thought it worked out quite perfectly. Don't know what else we could have done.
Well, it's a long season for you, and of course, picking up big results. I know that the Sweden SimRacing esports team has done really well over the course of last year, but here into this year, it looks like you're starting to pick up the points once again. How are you looking at this going into the next round, knowing you've picked up a very strong result here at Daytona?
We're definitely keeping the momentum into the next race. So, to be honest, I think we couldn't be happier. Next is going to be a GT race, I think. So, to be honest, we're quite excited. It's gonna be plenty of fun.
Well, I'm sure it will do, and we definitely look forward to seeing you when that comes into play. Jesper Eriksson there joining us, a 3rd position overall there, Joe, and drove really a strong race to come back through the field.
Absolutely. I mean, speaking of a strong race and also coming back through the field, Kyle Hendricks starting this from the pole, getting a penalty early, somehow fighting back to the front over, what was it, 100 laps or so, Kyle? That was monumental.
Yeah, it was quite a rough start. Appreciate you guys doing the broadcast, but yeah, it's kind of an inverse of my race last night. Last night started off great. First 100 laps. This race was a disaster the first 100 laps. So I'm glad we got some green flag runs there in the second half, and I was able to kind of pick my way up through the field and get back up there.
Now, I was trying to find your stats in the majors. Is this your first event with them, or have you competed here before?
My first event was the event 4 years ago, the 1987 Daytona 500 for John that we did. Lost that in a heartbreaking fashion as well. I think I was 6 laps down and got taken out when I got back on the lead lap a few laps later. But this is my second time with majors, and big reason I was out there, what I was trying to do is not affect any of the guys running for the year-long championship. I understand I'm a ringer, but we're going to put on a good show, try to have a good finish, and see if I could have come out of there with a victory. Can't get much closer.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's hard to get closer than that without actually winning. I mean, talk us through the emotions on that final lap and trying to make the move. We asked Trevor about the gamble of the late yellow. You seem to be pretty confident that you didn't have to do it until the final lap.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to bank on a yellow or anything like that. I mean, if it was going to happen, it was going to happen. But on the final lap itself, I was surprised Trevor took the bottom and didn't try to block my run on the top and gave me the outside in 3 and 4, because that's kind of what I wanted. My car's really, really good up top, especially. And I think if the 12 car, forgive me, I forget his name, if he hadn't have gotten so close, I think I would have had enough momentum coming off of 4 there. Would have beat him by a little bit. But 12 sucked up, got him a little bit of a push, and then went low on him. And but hey, it was a great finish, 3 wide. I can't complain after as bad as it started to come home second.
Yeah, exactly. Still, and like I said, we were hugely impressed with the run that you had. Anybody you want to shout out to before you go?
Yeah, I'm doing all 3 of the majors races this weekend. I want to thank my wife for allowing me to do it. We've got a 6-7 month old baby, so that's a big burden on her to handle that for 9 hours of racing. And also, thanks for letting me do it and not hurting me. But other than that, I want to thank you guys for putting on an excellent broadcast. And I'll see y'all tonight if y'all do tonight's race.
Well, thank you very much, Kyle. It was our second place finisher in the 385 car. Obviously has a very supportive family, letting him compete very well in our races for the majors this weekend. But that's going to wrap us up. So we, of course, want to give a big thank you to the majors for bringing us back for another season of coverage, as well as to our team today, Jake, Christian, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media, our website, and our merchandise store. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment. Next race is the Road America 2 Hours. That'll be Sunday, March 16th. No, excuse me. It'll be Spa-Francorchamps, rather, for the European side, rather. We've got March 16th still, but that will be on at 11 a.m. Eastern. Next up, though, on the channel, the DCRA goes to Road Atlanta. That'll be Wednesday, February 19th. And be sure to check out our other broadcasts that we've got listed here. And until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Anybody really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.